Story 1. At Thanksgiving, my sister mocked me for still being single. I said, "I'm married." The room froze as I showed proof. She'd hidden every invite. The turkey was dry. Of course, it was. My mother could never get the time perfect, but no one ever criticized her since I was the only one who received criticism in our family. "Claire, could you please pass the cranberry sauce?" My sister Melissa's voice was dripping with syrupy sweetness, which she had honed over 34 years as the beloved kid. Her diamond engagement ring reflected the light as she stretched across the table, nearly blinding me with its ostentation. I handed her the sauce without commenting. It had been 18 months since I had last sat at this table, and I could immediately recall why I had avoided it. "So Melissa's wedding was absolutely spectacular," Mom said, embarking on what had to be the 14th review of the event I hadn't attended. "The flowers alone cost more than most people's cars, and the venue," she went on. "That country club has a 3-year waiting list, but Melissa's husband, has connections. Ethan knows people everywhere," Melissa said, clutching her husband's arm. He grinned that politician's smile, which he had presumably perfected in the mirror. "It's one of the perks of being a successful litigation attorney." I sliced into my dry turkey without saying anything. This is the game we played. They talked at me, not to me, and I was supposed to sit there and take it all in like an emotional punching bag wrapped in Christmas sweaters. My dad cleared his throat. "Claire, the ceremony was amazing. You truly missed something special." "I'm sure it was lovely," I said, my tone calm. "Lovely." My mother's fork clattered on her plate. "It was the wedding of the century. Everyone who mattered in this town was present, including the Carters, Whitmans, and Mayor Collins." Melissa smiled wider. "We had 320 guests. The response rate was fantastic. Almost everyone we invited arrived." I drank a drink of wine while waiting. A trap was being laid. I could feel it. After 28 years of being disappointed, I recognized the pattern. "Speaking of weddings," Melissa remarked, her tone turning to the condescending tone she saved for me. "When are you going to settle down, Claire? You aren't growing any younger, you know." There it was. Mom interrupted before I could answer. "She's been dating him for 4 years now. What is his name again? James? John? Daniel," I said gently. "Right, Daniel. What is he doing again?" "Something about computers. He's a software engineer at Microsoft." Melissa laughed, making a tinkling sound like broken glass. "Oh, that's correct. The IT man. Does he even have a suit?" Ethan laughed politely at his wife's joke. My father stared at his plate with deep focus, as he often did when the discourse went harsh. He never took part in the attacks, yet he never stopped them either. In some ways, his quiet hurt more than their words. "When is the big day anyway?" Melissa continued, encouraged by her audience. "Is he dragging his feet? Men can tell when a woman is desperate. You know, it turns them off." I cautiously placed down my fork. My heart pounded, but my hands remained firm. This was it. The moment I had been dreading and expecting for 8 months. "Actually, I had my wedding already," I informed him. The total quiet that fell over the table allowed me to hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corridor. For faces looked at me with varied degrees of shock. Melissa's mouth had literally dropped open. "You what?" Mom finally succeeded. "I was married 8 months ago. June 14th to be precise." "That's impossible," Melissa said. "You didn't. We would have." "You got invitations," I said calmly, reaching up my wine glass. "All of you did." My father discovered his voice. "Claire, we never got an invitation. We would have come if we had received them." I took out my phone, sliding my fingers across the screen with practiced accuracy. "Let me show you something." I'd had these screenshots for months, waiting for this precise time. The first one displayed the certified postal tracking information. 5 items, 5 addresses, and all signed for on April 24th. "Do you see this?" I turned the phone to my father. "This is a signature confirmation. Someone at this address signed all 5 invites." I focused closely on the signature line. The scroll was obviously Melissa's. My sister's face lost its color. That could be anything, Mom said quickly, but her voice faltered. I swiped to the next screenshot. This is an email confirmation from the stationery company. Custom invitations were bought in February and delivered in April. And here, another swipe, is my credit card statement, which shows I paid for Priority Mail Express with signature confirmation to guarantee they came soon. Melissa. My father said quietly, but there was hardness beneath. Did you sign for the letter intended to your mother and me? I do not recall. Maybe I... Melissa's demeanor was breaking like old paint. Let me refresh your memory. I was amazed at how calm I sounded given how fast my heart was beating. April 24th was a Tuesday. You stopped by early to drop off Mom's birthday present before departing for the conference in Denver. You offered to get the mail while you were here. How can you remember that? Ethan demanded, his legal instincts taking over to protect his wife. Because I contacted Mom that afternoon to check she got the invitation. She stated that no mail had arrived other than some catalogs. That seemed weird to me given that the tracking showed delivery at 10:42 a.m. When I studied the signature later, I recognized Melissa's handwriting right away. Melissa's face has changed from white to crimson. You had me investigated. I phoned the post office. Hardly the FBI. I took another drink of wine, thankful that years of drama lessons in high school had taught me how to project confidence that I didn't really have. But you still haven't responded to Dad's query. Have you signed for our mail? This is ridiculous, Melissa said, standing quickly. I don't have to sit here and be accused. Sit down. My dad's voice cracked like a whip. I had never heard him use that tone before. Melissa sat. He looked at me, his expression confused and even wounded. Why aren't you telling us? Even if we had missed the invites, you may have phoned. This was the question I had been preparing for. I had practiced it in therapy for weeks before agreeing to attend the dinner. I did call, I said, my voice calm, several times. The first time was May 4th, following 4 weeks of radio quiet. Mom, you said you were busy preparing Melissa's engagement party and would call me back. You did not. Mom opened her lips to complain, but I persisted. I phoned again on May 11th, got voicemail, and left a message that I was frightened since the wedding was just 6 weeks away, and I hadn't heard back from anybody. Nobody phoned back. I opened up my call log. I've been backing up my phone records for months just for this time. On May 18th, I phoned Dad's mobile and got voicemail. On May 20th, I texted the family group chat, which I now realize I am no longer a part of. I contacted the house line 3 times on May 25th. On May 29th, we issued an email to everyone. We never got an email, she asserted, because Melissa has access to the family email account and she deleted it. I stared at my sister, who had become extremely motionless, exactly as she had erased the one I sent in April, shortly after mailing the invites. You can't prove that, Melissa muttered. I retrieved the email account activity log. Daniel showed me how to check it. It turns out that if you were the one who created the family email account years ago, you still have recovery access. I gave Melissa a direct glance. The email was opened on April 26th at 8:36 p.m. from this house's IP address and then erased forever. Someone did not want anyone else to see it. Ethan's expression had changed from protective to calculating. As a lawyer, he knew exactly what the evidence indicated. Claire, Mom murmured for the first time in years, her voice unsure. Why didn't you drive over here? If you truly wanted us to attend your wedding, you could have. Mom, I live in Seattle. It's a 4-hour drive each way. I drove that route 15 times in the 2 years leading up to my move. How many times did any of you come to me? 0. The number hovered in the air between us. You came for Christmas? Dad answered hesitantly. I drove here for Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, Mom and Melissa's birthdays, and your birthday. I attended Melissa's engagement party, bridal shower, and bachelorette weekend. I changed my work schedule, spent hundreds of dollars on petrol, and slept on that terrible couch bed in the guest room that smelled like mothballs. My voice stayed calm, but I could feel years of stored hurt forming into words. And you know what? Nobody has ever asked me about my life. No one said, "Hey, Claire, how's your work going?" Or, "Are you pleased in Seattle?" It was always about Melissa. "That's not fair," Melissa remarked, but her tone lacked conviction. "Isn't it? When is my birthday, Melissa?" She blinked. "What is my birthday? Which day is it?" Silence. "It's October 12th, I announced. "I turned 34 this year." Nobody called. Nobody texted. I didn't even receive a Facebook message. "We've all been so busy," Mom explained. "I phoned you for your birthday, Mom. As I do every year, I sent you costly flowers from your favorite downtown store." I remembered. Why couldn't anyone remember me? My dad's shoulders sagged. For the first time, he appeared older. "The wedding was beautiful," I said, my voice softening. The rage was drained away, leaving a void in its wake. Daniel and I married at a small church by the seaside. Only us, his parents, his sister, his brother, and perhaps 16 of our closest friends. There are a total of 24 persons, small, private, and lovely. His mother helped me get into my outfit. When it became evident that my father would not be present, his father led me down the aisle. We exchanged vows that we had written ourselves. And then we had supper at this incredible seafood restaurant overlooking the lake. I picked up a snapshot on my phone of Daniel and me laughing, my veil flying in the coastal air. I appeared cheerful. I'm actually delighted. We honeymooned in Hawaii for 3 weeks, Maui. It was amazing. I scrolled through photographs of sunsets, beaches, the two of us swimming, hiking, and simply living in a place where no one compared me to anybody else. The best 3 weeks of my life, actually. The wedding and honeymoon. Mom reached for the phone, but I grabbed it back. "I'm not done. Claire, please. I need to say something. I've needed to say this for years." I glanced at each one in turn. When Melissa got engaged, Mom immediately began preparing. "Remember, you called suppliers the same night. You created a Pinterest board. You poured yourself into making her day great. Do you know how that felt? Watching you be so concerned about her happiness while treating mine as an afterthought. We love you both equally," Mom insisted, but the words seemed empty. "Do you? Because from where I sit, it's always the Melissa show. Melissa the cheerleader. Melissa is the homecoming queen. Melissa is the sorority president. Melissa, who graduated summa cum laude. Melissa married a wealthy lawyer. Meanwhile, I am simply Claire. Claire has a normal work and a regular existence in Seattle where no one ever visits." "You never seem to want the same things Melissa wanted," Dad replied gently. "So that makes me less deserving of your attention and love?" I shake my head. "I earned a master's degree in environmental science. I work with a charity that is making an impact in water conservation policies. I bought my own condo with no support from anyone. I've constructed a life I'm proud of, yet you've never asked me about it. Do you know what I do all day?" More silence. "I analyze water usage patterns and develop sustainability models for municipalities. I told you it isn't glamorous. It will not make me affluent. Last year, however, 40 cities approved laws that I helped to investigate. Millions of people now have improved access to clean water because to the work I did. I am proud of that. I'm proud of the life I've built." "We're proud of you, too," Mom murmured, but she couldn't meet my gaze. "Are you? So, why did Melissa throw away my wedding invitations?" All eyes were on my sister. She had been silent for long minutes, her face changing hues of crimson and white. Now she appeared to be cornered. "I didn't," she began, then stopped. All right, I took them, but you do not comprehend." "Then explain it to me." "It was meant to be about my wedding." The words sprang out of her like a champagne cork. "For once, I was supposed to be the center of attention without you trying to steal my thunder." I truly laughed. Couldn't help it. "Steal your thunder? Melissa, I have been invisible for years. How could I possibly?" "You always do it. You appear humble and modest, but then you do these tricks to make others feel sorry for you." Oh, poor Claire. No one notices her. It is manipulation. "I sent invites to my wedding. What is the nature of the manipulation? The timing. Melissa was on her feet again, her voice increasing to a volume that likely alarmed the neighbors. My wedding happened in September. You have scheduled yours for June. You were attempting to outshine me by getting married first. The logic was so warped that I nearly couldn't understand it. Melissa, you got engaged in January. You had been dating Ethan for 6 years before that. Daniel proposed to me in December, and we planned a summer wedding since we both enjoy the seashore in June. Your wedding date has nothing to do with mine. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous. The word tasted odd. Of what exactly? Of everything I have. The perfect husband, the big house, the respect in this community. I don't want any of that, I said, and I realized I meant it. I do not want a large house in this town. I don't want to be on any charity boards or join a country club. I just wanted my family at my wedding. I wanted you to see me happy. Well, you should have tried harder to make sure we got the invitations, replied my mother, and I could see her taking sides in real time. This was it. The moment when they banded together around Melissa, rewrote history to make me the villain, and carried on as if this discussion had never occurred. I have watched this movie previously. I knew how it ended, but this time I was given the option of staying for the credits or leaving. You're right, I responded, rising up and grabbing my purse. I should have tried harder. I should have walked up at your door and made you acknowledge me. But you know what? I am tired of trying. I'm weary of being the person that always reaches out, makes an effort, and then gets slammed down for it. Claire, sit down, Dad instructed. We're not done here. We actually are. I came here tonight because a part of me still hoped that you would notice, that you missed my wedding, that you'd be disappointed you weren't there. However, you are not unhappy about missing it. You're unhappy because I'm calling Melissa out for tossing away the invites. She's your sister, Mom said. Family forgives. Does it? Because I've been forgiving you guys for years, and I don't think I've ever gotten the same kindness. I pulled on my coat. I forgive you for missing my college graduation because Melissa had a sorority function. I forgive you for canceling our Christmas visit the year Daniel and I first started dating because Melissa required assistance relocating. I forgive you for spending my birthday helping Melissa choose wedding sites. I have done nothing but forgive. Where are you going? Dad inquired. Return to Seattle. Back to my marriage, my house, and my life, which I established without any of you. You're being dramatic, Melissa remarked, her voice shaking slightly. No, I'm done. There is a difference. I started towards the door, but then hesitated. For what it is worth, I truly wanted you there, all of you. Daniel's mother continued asking why my family hadn't arrived, and I kept making excuses since I couldn't confess that my own sister had ruined me. His family felt so awful that they attempted to involve me more, which just made it clear that mine didn't care enough to go. Dad responded, We didn't know, and I saw a crack in his voice. You could have known. You had my phone number, email, and address. If you had wanted to be a part of my life, you could have been. Melissa did not truly prevent it. She basically gave you license to continue doing what you were doing, treating me as if I didn't matter. I opened the door. Cold November air swept in, bearing the aroma of withering leaves in the impending winter. Claire, wait, my father said, one hand out. Please, let's talk about this. We have been discussing, or rather, I've been talking while you've been making excuses. I stepped onto the porch. Do you know what the saddest thing is? Daniel asked if I wanted to invite you to Thanksgiving at his parents' house. His family wished to meet mine. I said no because I knew you'd all be here to celebrate Melissa. I came regardless because I felt like I owed you one more opportunity. I was wrong. You can't just walk away from your family, Mom remarked through the doorway. Watch me. I got halfway to my car when Melissa's voice stopped me. Claire, wait. She had hurried out without a coat, holding herself against the cold. For a brief moment, she resembled the girl I'd shared a room with for 18 years, the one who used to comb my hair and lend me her clothing before everything turned into a competition I never committed to participate in. I'm sorry, she whispered, and to my amazement, tears streamed down her cheek. I'm very sorry. You're correct. I took the invites. I threw them away. I promised myself I'd just keep them hidden till after my wedding and then tell everyone. She swallowed breath. Then it was easy to pretend they never arrived. It was easier than admitting what I had done. Why? I asked. Just tell me why. Because you were always the good one, she said, her voice breaking. Everyone always says that. Claire is really brilliant. Claire is extremely committed. Claire doesn't require all of that care. But I needed it. I needed to feel exceptional. And the only way I could do so was to avoid being compared to you. That is insane, Melissa. I was never competing with you. I understand. That's what made things worse. You didn't even try. But people still loved you. She wiped her eyes forcefully. I am the worst sister in the world. I destroyed your wedding. I can't take it back. No, you can't. We stood there in the cold, 3 feet apart and unbridgeable. Will you ever forgive me? She whispered. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not now. Today, I am too furious and upset, and I need to return home to the person who genuinely shows up for me. I got in my car and drove away, seeing my childhood home fade in the rearview mirror. Before I even got on the freeway, my phone started vibrating with calls and texts from everyone, most likely attempting to digest what had just transpired. I set it to silence. Daniel was waiting for me when I arrived home, even though it was past midnight. He took one glance at me and drew me into his embrace. Is it that bad? He asked. Worse, but better. I believe I have finally stated what I needed to say. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me, too. I moved back to look at him. Is your family still celebrating Thanksgiving tomorrow? Of course. Mom's already inquiring when we'll arrive. So that's our family now, I explained. The one that actually wants us. I could not sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their expressions around the table. Shock, disbelief, and Mom's shuddered look when she realized she couldn't change the story. I kept repeating Melissa's confession on the porch, looking for sincerity in her tears. Had she intended it, or was it just another performance? Damage control to save her reputation as the golden child? Daniel discovered me around 3 a.m. sitting on our balcony in the cold, wrapped in a blanket and looking at nothing. Are you unable to turn off your brain? He inquired, slipping onto the chair next to me. I keep thinking about what Melissa said about my being the decent guy. How does that make sense? They treated her like royalty my entire life. People's internal narratives don't always match reality. He leaned across and held my hand. She most likely felt pressure to maintain that immaculate image. The dread of falling off a pedestal may be overwhelming. That doesn't excuse what she did. No, it doesn't, but it might explain it. He softly squeezed my fingers. The question is, what do you want to happen next? I had been avoiding thinking about it. For so long, the encounter had been my primary aim, and I had made no other plans. What did happen next? Could I really move away from my family forever? Did I really want to? I don't know, I acknowledged. A part of me wants to never talk to them again, but another part. I stopped off, attempting to describe my feelings. I spent so many years trying to win their affection. Maybe I should show to myself that I can live without it. You already exist without it. You have been doing that for years. Have I, though? Or have I simply been pretending, secretly hoping they'll wake up one day and see me? It was painful to make the disclosure. Every accomplishment, every milestone. A part of me was still acting for an audience that wasn't there. Daniel remained quiet for a bit, carefully selecting his words. You sobbed when we got engaged. Happy tears. You murmured, but I recall you saying something else. Maybe now they'll take me seriously, you said. I had stated that I had forgotten. Then the recollection came pouring back. We'd been at the restaurant where he proposed. Champagne bubbles still tickling my nose when those words came out before I could stop them. I wanted them at our wedding because I thought it would finally prove I was worth showing up for. I explained slowly, the reality dawning on me as I spoke. But they didn't arrive. And you know what? Regardless, the wedding was lovely. We were content anyway. I didn't need them there to confirm my happiness. No, you didn't. So why is it still hurting so much? Because you're grieving, Daniel explained simply. You are mourning the family you should have had. The parents who should have celebrated both of their daughters equally, and the sister who should have been your greatest friend rather than your adversary. Claire, that is a big loss. You are permitted to experience it. I allowed myself to cry properly for the first time since leaving that house. Not angry or furious tears, but deep hurting sobs of real loss. Daniel supported me through everything without attempting to cure or improve anything, but simply being present. When I eventually stopped, drained and fatigued, he asked if I wanted hot chocolate. I nodded and he went inside. Through the glass door, I saw him walk around our kitchen, which we had designed together and filled with items that made us happy rather than those that were spectacular to others. A kitchen where we'd entertained friends who genuinely cared about us, where we'd cooked, laughed, and made a life. They had missed it all. And suddenly, sitting there covered in my blanket at 3 a.m., I knew it was their loss, not my own. Daniel reappeared with 2 glasses topped with whipped cream and chocolate shavings. He'd even sent the peppermint sticks I adored, which I found during our honeymoon at a small cafe in Lahaina. I love you, I stated. For so many reasons, but right now especially for remembering the peppermint sticks. I pay attention, he stated with a little smile. It's what people do when they love someone. Such a simple sentence, but it embodied everything my family had failed to achieve. Paying attention, remembering, and showing up, the fundamental building blocks of love that I'd been craving without even recognizing it. Your mom asked me something last week, Daniel replied, stirring his hot chocolate. She inquired whether your family had ever met me before the wedding. When I told her no, she looked very heartbroken. She said, every parent would be anxious to meet the one who makes their child light up as you do when we talk about our life together. My throat clenched. She said what? Yes, she did. She then explained that their loss was her gain since she now has you as a daughter. She meant it too. My mother does not say anything she does not intend. I know. I observed it about Helen within an hour of meeting her. She was warm yet honest, caring yet direct. Everything my own mother was not. They want to do a second reception for us, Daniel explained. Nothing major, just family and a few close friends. An opportunity to rejoice with those who genuinely care. My parents want to host it, perhaps in the spring when the weather is nicer. What are your thoughts? The concept should have seemed off somehow, like a consolation reward, but it did not. It seemed like a gift. I think that sounds perfect, I commented. Can we do it at that lakeside venue? The one with large windows. Already checked. They have availability in May. Of course, he had. That is what partners do. They foresaw needs, made arrangements, and turned up every single time. We waited on the balcony till dawn began coloring the sky pink and gold. Something fundamental changed inside of me during those silent hours. The rage and hurt persisted, but it no longer seemed like they were engulfing me from the inside out. They became something I carried rather than something that carried me. Daniel's Thanksgiving was everything that my family's celebration had not been. Yes, it was loud, but it was filled with laughing rather than anxiety. His sister Olivia met me with a crushing embrace and an urgent need to view more wedding images. His brother Ryan attempted to teach me the family card game, which apparently everyone learns at the age of 6. Helen was concerned about whether I was eating enough, and Daniel's father, Robert, insisted on learning everything about my work. He was truly engaged in water conservation policies in a way that my own parents had never been. So, you are telling me that the algorithm you helped build saved Los Angeles 35 million gallons of water in 8 months? Robert leaned forward, his eyes bright with eagerness. That is extraordinary. How did you deal with seasonal change and usage patterns? I described the process, warming to the subject as I usually did when someone was willing to listen. He posed insightful questions, questioned some of my assumptions in a way that made me think rather than feel defensive. And by the end of dinner, I had promised to give him links to our published research. You've got a brilliant wife, he said Daniel as we were clearing dishes. I hope you know that. I do, Daniel responded, catching my gaze across the table. Trust me, I do. Later, despite Helen's protestations, she gently brought up my family situation. Daniel mentioned that things were difficult with your parents during Thanksgiving, she remarked, scouring a roasting pan with more vigor than required. I hope I'm not going too far, but I want you to know that whatever occurred does not affect anything here. We consider you family now. Not because you married Daniel, but because of who you are. I needed to set down the dish I was drying before I dropped it. Thank you. That means more than you realize. I'm a mother, Helen stated simply. I can't picture my children treating you the way yours did. Olivia informed me what happened to the invitations. Is that your own sister? She shook her head. I won't talk poorly of someone I've never met, but I will say this. Their inability to recognize your worth does not reduce yours. It merely shows their ignorance. I'm still processing all of it, I acknowledged. Part of me wants to cut them off entirely. Part of me feels guilty for even thinking about it. Guilt is a powerful tool, Helen explained, washing the pan and placing it on the drying rack, especially when it has been used against you throughout your life. But here's something I learned while parenting for children. Sometimes love isn't enough. People might harm us not because they don't love us, but because they don't know how to love us correctly, and we have the right to protect ourselves from it, even if it comes from relatives. My dad called yesterday, I said, just checking in. He described it as uncomfortable. Neither of us knew what to say. Typically, the first talks after major revelations. She gave me another plate to dry. The question isn't whether it was comfortable, Helen told me. The question is whether he is willing to perform the difficult effort of genuinely transforming. Words are simple. Consistent activity is difficult. 3 days later, my father sent me an email, a lengthy one filled with apologies, realizations, and pledges to do better. He asked if we could actually discuss about starting fresh. I said, maybe eventually, but I needed time. He replied he understood. Melissa sent a Facebook message. I did not read it. I switched off alerts for the family group chat I had been readed to, most likely at Dad's suggestion. Ethan issued a LinkedIn request, which I denied. Mom did not contact me at all. It hurt less than I thought. My mother's quiet became an explanation in and of itself. Days stretched into weeks, and while my father's weekly calls continued brief and circumspect, but present, Mom was glaringly absent. I saw Mom in that house, reorganizing the same closets she'd been organizing my whole life, holding her book club, attending her charity luncheons, and living in a world where painful realities could be ignored by sheer force of habit. Work became my shelter throughout those weeks. I immersed myself into a new project investigating drought patterns in the Southwest, thankful for challenges with clear data sets and simple answers. My coworker Lauren noted the increasing intensity. "You're here before me and leaving after me?" she said one evening, sticking her head into my office about 7 p.m. "Is everything okay?" "Family stuff," I answered hazily. "Just needed the distraction." She sat across from my desk without invitation, which I usually enjoyed. "Do you want to talk about it?" Surprisingly, I did. I told her everything. The wedding, the invites, and the Thanksgiving confrontation. Lauren listened without interrupting, her face changing from shock to fury to something resembling comprehension. "My sister and I didn't speak for 3 years," she added as I finished. "Different reason. She borrowed money and never paid it back, then behaved like I was the culprit for bringing it up. But the dynamics were comparable. She was the favorite. I was an afterthought. Our parents were always on her side." "How was it resolved?" I asked. "It didn't, actually. She ultimately apologized and we now have a polite relationship, but only on the surface. We will never be as close as we were as children. I had to mourn that connection and accept that the sister I desired no longer existed. Maybe it never existed in the manner I recall. Is it still hurting sometimes?" Lauren acknowledged, "Mostly on holidays or when I encounter other sisters who are also friends. But I've created my own family. My spouse, our friends, and my chosen folks. They show up for me in ways that my blood kin never have." She arose and stretched. Give yourself time to think out what you want things to look like in the future. And don't allow anyone shame you into forgiving before you're ready. Her sentiments matched Helen's, reflecting common knowledge from women who had learned to set boundaries the hard way. I was curious how many individuals bore these scars, smiling during family events while slowly bleeding from invisible incisions. That weekend, Daniel and I had a dinner party. Nothing fancy, just 6 friends, decent wine, and the beef bourguignon dish I had been honing for months. Our buddy Sophie brought her new girlfriend, and our neighbor Ben arrived with handmade bread that outperformed my grocery store buns. We ate, joked, and played charades until midnight, and no one asked me about my pregnancy or why I hadn't been home in a while. "This is nice," I remarked to Daniel as we cleaned up afterward, both pleasantly tipsy and exhausted. "This feels like family." "It's family," he said, filling the dishwasher with somewhat less accuracy than normal. "We get to select this. Blood does not have the monopoly on love." I considered this while I scrubbed the wine glasses by hand, seeing soap bubbles catch the light. My parents had always regarded family as an obligation, something to be done regardless of the underlying problems. But what if family was more about connection? What about showing up, paying attention, and creating room for each other's joy? Melissa sent me an email on Tuesday morning, not through Facebook this time, but to my work address, indicating that she had looked up where I worked and obtained my contact information. The subject line was simply, "Please read this." I gazed at it for 30 minutes before opening it. "Claire, I understand you probably do not want to hear from me. I wouldn't want to hear from myself either, but my therapist insists that I make restitution as part of my healing process. And while I realize this is ultimately for me, I hope it also helps you. I've been reflecting a lot on why I did what I did. The simple explanation is envy, but it's more nuanced than that. Growing up, I always felt the need to be flawless. Mom and Dad never stated it openly, but I internalized the message that my value was dependent on my accomplishments. Good grades, lovely outfits, the appropriate guy, and the perfect wedding. It was all part of the scorecard I was striving to complete to prove I earned their affection. You didn't appear to require that confirmation in the same way. You simply existed firmly in your own place. You didn't care if you weren't the prom queen or if your major didn't wow their peers. And it somehow made you scary to me because if you could be adored without acting, what did that say about all of my performances? When your invitation arrived, I experienced a moment of terror. Your wedding was going to be the first, and it was going to be modest, private, and genuine, something mine wasn't. Mine was a large production for 280 individuals, most of whom I hardly knew. I'd spent a year preparing it with Mom, and somewhere along the road, it shifted from being about Ethan and me to demonstrating something to people whose opinions should not have mattered. I told myself that if I simply delayed everyone finding out about your wedding until after mine, I'd be able to retain the illusion of going first, being first, and winning a competition that only existed in my mind. And then I promised myself I'd come clean. But the more I waited, the tougher it became until it was simpler to simply pretend it never occurred. I understand that this doesn't solve anything. I realize I deprived you of having your family present on one of the most significant days of your life. I know I harmed you in a way that may be unforgivable. And I know I wounded Mom and Dad by having them miss it and then leading them to believe they didn't receive the invites. I'm now in therapy twice a week trying to figure out why I so strongly require external affirmation. Why do I perceive everything as a competition? Why can't I be pleased for others without making it about myself? This difficult labor. I am not liking it, but I am doing it because I no longer want to be this person. I do not expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to answer to my email, but I wanted you to know that I understand what I did. I realize it was wrong, and I genuinely deeply apologize. I hope you are pleased with Daniel. I hope your life in Seattle fulfills all of your expectations. And I hope that someday maybe we might rekindle our relationship as sisters, even if it takes years, even if it never occurs. Melissa. I read it 3 times, analyzing each phrase for sincerity, manipulation, and any resemblance to the sister I knew before everything turned complex. The remarks appeared sincere, but Melissa had always been gifted with words. I sent it to Daniel without remark, then to Lauren. After nearly an hour of hesitation, I went to my father. He responded within minutes. Claire, she's trying. That is all I can tell you. It is up to you to decide whether it is enough. Was she trying? Or was this simply another act? Therapy speak performed in the service of her own rehabilitation with no regard for the harm she'd done? I could not tell. And the unknown was its own form of pain. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, a gift came at my doorstep. Inside was a wedding card, unopened and addressed to my parents. One of 5 invitations. My father's message stated that he discovered it while assisting Melissa in cleaning out some storage boxes from the garage. She'd stashed them all there, seemingly expecting they'd be overlooked among the holiday decorations and old tax records. I showed Daniel. We admired the gorgeous calligraphy and the carefully crafted wording, asking my family to share our love. Should we keep it? He asked. No, I said. Let's put it in the album anyway as a reminder of what they missed, of what we built without them. Christmas came and went without a visit to my hometown. New Year's, too. My father phoned once a week and we had brief discussions about the weather and work, avoiding anything substantive. It was something, I guess. In February, Melissa left me a voicemail. She was in treatment dealing with her difficulties. She stated she understood if I never wanted to speak with her again, but she was trying to improve. She hoped I was pleased. I was. In March, Mom fell and shattered her hip. Dad called, his voice raspy from weariness, asking if I could come help. Before driving down, I gave it a lot of thought, more than I probably should have. Not because I'd forgiven anything, but because I was choosing to show up after years of not being asked properly. When I came into that hospital room, Mom shed real tears, not the fake sort she was so skilled at. She apologized for not being the mother I needed. She stated she'd been thinking about all the ways she'd failed me while laying in that hospital bed with nothing to do except ponder. Maybe she intended it. Maybe it was the painkillers talking. I didn't know. And I astonished myself by realizing I didn't have to know right immediately. I'm here, I informed her. That's enough for today. Melissa turned up that evening. We sat on opposite sides of Mom's bed, not speaking directly to one another, but also not ignoring each other. Small steps. I remained for 4 days assisting Dad with housekeeping, dealing with insurance companies, and managing prescription regimens. On the final day, he hugged me tightly and thanked me for attending. You didn't have to, he said quietly. After everything, I understand, but I wanted to. I drew back and faced him directly. I'm not totally recovering, Dad. This does not erase what occurred. But I'm not disappearing either. We'll find out something in between. He nodded. Perhaps for the first time, his eyes filled with comprehension. The journey back to Seattle seemed different, lighter. As if I'd released a weight I'd been carrying for so long that I'd forgotten it was there. I contacted Daniel from a rest break and said I was on my way home. How are you feeling? He asked. Like myself, I said. Finally. That more than anything else was cause for celebration. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Cousin called me at midnight to babysit her grown kids. I said no, chaos followed, and now I have a restraining order, even though I hardly knew her or her adult children. I declined my cousin's midnight call asking me to watch them. I have my own life, work full-time, and am 28. Being 28, naturally that is irrelevant because it seems that I should always schedule time for my family. I know maybe 7% of them by name and 15% of them by face, but let's overlook that. I'm sorry, but someone is sure to get bogged down in the details with the 400 Mildreds, 250 Lindis, and 800 Stephanies, Chelseas, and Janets I see once every full planetary alignment. Naturally, when my parents, grandma, and siblings are all free, I make time for them. Being the youngest of 3, I work at the most forgiving job. Even though it's not that bad, I also schedule time for other people I see on a regular basis. Well, let's get back to the funeral. Throughout the pre-ceremony event, I kept getting the question, "Do you remember me?" And, "Are you aware of my identity?" To prevent any discomfort, I responded, "Yes, yes, and yes. It's been a long time." One of my cousins, of whom I have no recollection but who evidently speaks to my mom on a daily basis, approached me during that time and introduced me to her children. We said hello to each other. According to their mother, they had been eagerly awaiting my arrival and appeared ecstatic to meet me. What the expletive? Was the first thing that came to me, but I ignored it because I wasn't in the right frame of mind. My cousin informed me that her children were in my state, around 40 minutes away from my home, and that they were roughly my age. I thought, oh, that's awesome. But I didn't give a damn. She said she would discuss it with my mother and proposed a little gathering later this year. Yes, all right. I took it as a cool, I don't have to worry about it, and went on, even though I'm not 14 anymore and don't need permission to do anything. Let's travel ahead to roughly 45 minutes. I receive a call at around midnight from a number located in the city where the majority of my family resides. Furthermore, the location is quite specific, too specific to be spam. I panicked, of course. My late grandfather was only a few years older than my grandma, who was down there at the time. Call me suspicious. I picked up the phone. Hi. Name. It's your relative. How are you? My thoughts are, who the expletive? However, I answered, hey, what's up? Is everything all right? Yes, she responded, as if perplexed by my inquiry. Everything is all right. Just checking in to see when you're free to get lunch this weekend with children's names. I felt like that meme with all the mathematics going about. After I eventually figured out who this was, I thought, this woman couldn't have contacted me at almost midnight to arrange your expletive play date. I'm sorry, what? I said. Remember at the funeral? She said we discussed getting together later with you and kids' names. In addition to son's name, applying to university, daughter's name is transferring there for her junior year. I was thinking that we could meet after their Saturday morning tour and you could take them out to lunch. Alcohol is just nowhere. Son's name is just 18. Hold on, what? She claimed they were about my age, but her son is incapable of drinking. As I clearly recall, she then begins to babble about how her daughter, who is 22 years old and doesn't know what moderation means, isn't permitted to drink unless she or her husband are around. What on earth would a 28, almost 29-year-old have to discuss with an 18 and 22-year-old? Perhaps I'm the only one who thinks this. Don't use drugs, concentrate on your studies, and don't get anyone pregnant. What's the topic of discussion? In addition, I don't even know these individuals. I was gasping and squawking on the phone before I even realized it. It was not appreciated by my cousin. I muttered, yeah, I don't think so. But I was too busy laughing to hear what she was saying. I don't get off until around 8 p.m. on Saturdays since I work a double shift. Well, first of all, I don't know what's so funny about what I said, she shot back. Additionally, you may simply have a wonderful supper or do something else. 8 p.m. is not that late. I had lost all patience by now. Ma'am, this isn't Star Trek and I work about 40 minutes away. After an 11-hour shift, I'm not in the mood to babysit, and I won't be arriving home until about 9 o'clock. Although this is a college town, I can suggest a few places for you guys to check out on your own. There aren't many locations that don't serve alcohol. They do have other drinks, after all. Pardon me, she said. I am aware that your mother did not teach you to treat others rudely, especially your relatives. I don't know you, dude. You're calling me at the most inconvenient time to arrange a get-together with your children, who are not my age, and I have no idea who you are. You're all young adults, girl. I cover the cost of my own health insurance. We are not alike. Do not call me again, please. After hanging up, I had a brief argument with my fiancé, who had been awakened by this absurdity. I'm not going to hear the end of this during regular waking hours, of course. In a subtle way, I hoped she would wake up and complain about me so my mother would scold her for phoning us at such an inappropriate hour. However, I am aware that my mother will point out that I should have been a bit more polite. To be honest, I believe I did okay by refraining from using profanity during the discussion. Perhaps I'm simply talking about my zero expletive tolerance. Update. It turns out that by making a joke about my cousin calling my mom to complain about me, I jinxed myself because she actually did just that. She awoke my hard-working, impoverished mother to spy on me. In my opinion, my mother is a complete gem. yet I have witnessed her attack others like a rogue chainsaw. Her charming fairy act wasn't a lie to me. Tinkerbell has a tendency to be petty. She mentioned that she said some words, which is her way of stating that she cursed, but she didn't tell me exactly what she said. After saying one sentence, she hung up. My mom contacted my cousin back to get the whole story when she had gotten up and had her coffee. She gave me a call at that point. My mom questioned me, "Did you make a Star Trek reference during a conversation with your cousin as to why you wouldn't be able to have dinner with her kids?" As soon as I answered, I could tell she was struggling to maintain her composure while being a mother. Indeed I did, since I only have a car and still need to pay gas. She was giving the impression that I had a transporter in my pocket. Over the phone, I could definitely hear her trying not to laugh. "Honey, I don't think she gets your sense of humor." Well, that should come as no surprise given that we don't even know one another. At that moment, my mom burst out laughing so loudly that my dad could hear it from a different room through the speaker. I could hear him laughing. My mother didn't have the strength to tell me to apologize just yet, even though I know she wanted to. She advised me to wait till my cousin had calmed down a bit, but she would keep me updated. I was traveling to work at the time of this call, which is what nearly caused me to crash my car. I understand that what your cousin did was absurd, but do you think it was appropriate to laugh at her? My mother asked. I won't reveal precisely what Mom told me next, but it seems that in her initial outburst, she had come up with a rather colorful moniker for my cousin. The N-word appeared in the name, but don't worry, we're all black. I had never heard my mother use that word in my entire life. She was so furious that I'm shocked she was able to contact this woman back, much less engage in a normal discussion. Therefore, I believe it should be clear that nobody in this household should be concerned about my urinating. I'm a bundle of kittens in comparison to my mom when she's exhausted. Second update. From now on, I shall refer to her as this raccoon dog, since I have officially had enough of her. Her name is in my contacts as well. Get ready to be as mistaken as I was if you believe that the entitlement and rudeness couldn't get much worse. I suppose I'm simply an expletive fool if you did believe that things might get worse. I decided to work on a new beer recipe I had developed since I had today off. So there I was with my brew pot in the kitchen. To put things in perspective, the first step in making beer at home is to prepare the wort, which is essentially your sugar water. In order to add malt extracts, the grains are first boiled in a kettle or stock pot and then the heat is turned off. Before boiling the liquid once more, you must stir until the extracts dissolve. Hops are then added, adding a range of tastes and bitterness. In this instance, I utilize several components that I produce myself during the initial boil, making my brews a little more complex. Because these materials take a long time to mature, I make sure not to squander any of it. Later on, this will be significant. The raccoon dog from hell called me while I was relaxing and doing my thing. My curiosity overcame me and I answered after considering leaving her on voicemail. "Hey, hi. This is RD. Oh, hello. What is going on?" I wanted to express my regret for the other day. The time didn't even cross my mind. Usually, I stay up quite late talking to someone. Unable to relate. Yes, I do feel that. No worries. Internally fuming. So pay attention. I was hoping you would think twice about hanging out with Name. Even though I know we had a rough start, I know you were worried since you don't know each other and they don't know anyone in that town. I understand. All I want is for them to be with someone they feel at ease with. Now, as I've stated in other remarks, I believe it to be very reasonable. She is their mother, after all, and is presumably merely attempting to ensure that college is enjoyable for them. Personally, I detested attending classes and spending so much time with strangers. I took online classes and stayed at home since I didn't like the idea of mingling at college. I told her that I understood exactly where she was coming from. I appreciate your understanding. Now, your mother informed me that due to your job, these things must be planned for you in advance, Artie said. Since we'll all be getting together anyhow, I was thinking about Thanksgiving or Christmas. Yes, of course. I don't see why not, as we'll all be at the same location anyhow. Excellent. Many thanks. They will be quite thrilled. Fantastic. With a gentle click-clack, I put the brew kettle back on the hot stove and said, "Sounds good. Are you preparing a meal?" "Yes, you can cook, don't you?" "What are you producing?" "I am brewing wort for a new recipe that I am experimenting with." "Wort? What is that?" "Oh, it's beer sugar base." "I apologize. Did you mention beer?" "Yes." "Are you brewing beer?" "Yes." "Oh, is your mom aware of what you're doing?" "I suppose so, since she knows I can make it." Awkward quiet. I said beer, not cocaine. "Didn't you hear me? Are you also able to make that?" "No. You're acting like I'm breaking something." So I asked, "Well, I'm just worried about the potential impact that could have on the children. Perhaps don't bring that up when you're hanging around. I am already aware that certain conventional families may not find my interests and employment choice suitable, but I would be dishonest if I claimed that her reaction and treatment of something I'm really passionate about didn't make me feel a bit upset. Only because I was going to see them over the holidays, and since I don't really discuss my passions in front of my family out of respect and to prevent any drama, did I not decline the hangout and end the call at that moment. Therefore, it wouldn't have been a problem. I simply agreed and rolled my eyes. Fantastic. All right. The final item. I am aware that the neighborhood has a large number of affordable apartments and student housing. Therefore, I wanted to know which ones we ought to investigate that would be both close to the school and you. This is the point at which reality set in. To be honest, I smiled a little. Well, the rates are fairly reasonable for a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's about a 5 to 10-minute walk from the school. That's amazing. You two might live next door. Yes, regarding that. Actually, before the year ends, we will be relocating to the city where I work, which is over 40 minutes away, so we won't be in the area. Oh, hold on. I'm not really paying attention. Are you stating that you will not be able to visit them? Put Britney Spears' WTF expression here. Actually, no. Not at all. We are moving closer to our employment so that we won't have to drive as far, which is the main goal. But you do it all the time, so I just don't understand why you couldn't go see them once or twice a week. Well, that would be really inconvenient for me. That doesn't seem very likely to me. Is spending a couple hours with your family inconvenient? Do you not make the extra drive to your parents' city? Yeah, but traffic is typically the cause. So you go see them. Despite that, you'll be even farther away when you move. I don't understand why it's so inconvenient for you to drive halfway to see your relatives, especially on days like today when you should be spending time with your family instead of creating booze. Simply put, I think your priorities are a little out of order. For the remainder of this talk, my brain decided that civility was unnecessary and pushed it into a locked closet. Despite the fact that I have painfully and deliberately chosen my words throughout all of our conversations, I exploded. I'm sorry. Did you really just compare the level of importance between your kids, who I have said exactly 0 words to in my entire 28 years of life, to my parents? I exploded. All right, honey. Let me start by saying that I have no idea to whom you are speaking once more. Who the explicit are you again? What do I owe you? What time or portion of my day do you deserve to reclaim? Why have you returned to my life? If we hadn't crossed paths again, what would I miss? Oh, nothing, since I don't know you explicitly. Furthermore, I don't have an attic, so I don't care if you choose to move in years before I can even recall your explicit name. I'm going to visit my folks and deliver them all the homemade alcohol I desire, and explicit you for diverting my attention, as my explicit wort is now ruined due to my kettle boiling over. I nearly lost it when I heard my fiancé laugh out loud in the adjacent room, but that was in the heat of the moment. I sounded like an irate Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls, he said later. Since I was so focused on getting the sticky mess of my damaged mixture off my stove and before my cat could get to it, I honestly can't recall if she said anything else after that. I hung up after saying an irate, "See you on Thanksgiving," which was all I could manage in my annoyance. Although I haven't heard from anybody else since, I'm quite certain that nobody will have the audacity to bring it up, given how out of character that blow-up was for me. I don't get angry very often, so when I do, my parents usually just make sure I'm all right and prevent anyone from bringing it up later. I have to give my fiancé credit for making me laugh so fast at the absurd noise I made when I saw the pot boil over. When he came to assist me clean up the mess, I asked him in jest if he believed I would be punished for that outburst. He claimed that he believes I frightened her enough to make her temporarily retreat to her trash den. Third update. I have had nothing to do at all for the first time since Thanksgiving. We appreciate everyone who took the time out of their day to read this, as it will be the final installment of this chaotic roller coaster. I'm glad I could keep you entertained. I know that most of you were anticipating some kind of media circus monstrosity family meal, but this is the moment you've all been waiting for. To be honest, so did I. However, this year the goddess of chaos chose to be my best friend and made the holiday absolutely ideal for me. My family's Thanksgiving was canceled. My fiancé and I had to work on Black Friday. My grandma stayed at home in remembrance of my grandfather, and my parents traveled to see my brother. Thus, we peacefully spent Thanksgiving at home. We watched a marathon of horror films while snuggled in our pajamas and enjoying a delectable supper and fantastic drinks that I had made. I was swooning over it like a fat cat in a tuna factory, and it was flawless. Then my phone rang. Though I chose to disregard the number because I didn't recognize it, they left a voicemail. But they could wait until tomorrow because I was on vacation for the holidays. Another call was received a few minutes later, the same figure, then another, and yet another, and yet another, and yet another. I was on the verge of enclosing my phone in a salt barrier in the hopes that it would deter the stalker. As the logical genius that he is, my fiancé recommended that I listen to the message, which I had entirely forgotten about. I turned it on so we could hear it. This is your landlord. Name. Since the workplace is plainly closed, I'm using my personal phone. I apologize for disturbing your vacation, but I must have a call from you as soon as possible. You're probably wondering where the raccoon dog comes in, but I phoned her back in a panic because I had missed around 8 calls from this woman by this time. Oh baby, it's gonna feel like Christmas. I don't have the entire discussion committed to memory, but I know I can get it very near. I remember what I said, and my landlord wasn't very professional throughout this call. Don't judge, but I would have been furious too. I gave my landlord a call. Hey! She sounded as though she had discovered an entire turkey in the toilet. Hey! I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was you and I began. No, honey, I understand. Like everyone else, you were having a great time on vacation. Please don't even think about it. She cut me off. Here's a nervous laugh. So what is going on? What's happening? Are you familiar with a woman named Raccoon Dog? She inquired. Her name was still a mystery to me, so I said, not off the top of my head, no. All right, so she's been berating our courteous cop for the last hour and a half and she knows you. She claimed that after you invited her children over, she is unable to contact you. Make sure that explicit didn't interpret my "see you on Thanksgiving" remark from our most recent phone conversation as an invitation to visit my house. I'm still having trouble connecting the dots at this point because I haven't spoken to this person in a month, and I was freaking out like a squirrel attempting to cross a busy street because my first thought when my landlord called me on her cell phone on Thanksgiving was eviction notice. I clarified that neither of us had invited anyone. Thus, I had no idea who this could be. See, that's what I thought, because you guys don't ever really have nobody around like that anyway, my landlord said, going into full nail salon black lady mode. Given that my fiancé and I are antisocial recluses, may my landlord rest in peace. The landlord went on, but she knows your identity, adding, and she has been requesting that we give her your room number without mentioning your fiancé. As in, really? No reputable business would simply divulge the information of its tenants in that manner. You would still be in violation of the law even if we did. What is she doing? I inquired. She parked in front of the fire zone with her kids in the car and is shouting police brutality because our courtesy officer gave her a fine and told her that if she doesn't move, we're going to have her car towed, stated my landlord. My apartment complex is very close to the university, and the main road leading to the separate properties is a frequently used route directly to many of the university buildings, as well as a third of the fraternities. They take this very, very, very seriously, and if there were a fire in that area, that section would most definitely be blocked off. Please note that the fine for parking in front of a fire zone here ranges from $500 to $2,000 depending on the location and severity of the situation. Did she relocate? I inquired. No. my landlord retorted. She threatened the courtesy officer after receiving a fine for the fire zone. Her children are still in the car, and he had to phone for assistance. My fiancé, seated next to me, burst out laughing like a crazy person as I cackled, clearly still in a panic because I still didn't know who this was. Yo, it's Raccoon Dog. My fiancé texted my mother. What? What dog? My landlady interrupted. This poor woman sounded so defeated and worn out as she questioned. Can you formally state that you didn't invite her and don't want her here? I told her everything from the beginning, and I could hear all the energy leave her body as she started laughing. This stunning woman said, "Okay, I got this expletive." In response to my confirmation, "You guys have an incredibly nice Thanksgiving." We hung up. I couldn't stop thinking about this woman's children and how ashamed they must have been. I don't understand how I haven't heard from someone who has fled at this point. I was silent, shocked, incredulous, and trying not to laugh. My fiancé clicked play on our movie and said, "Eat. Watch." I honestly didn't know what to say, so I just followed his instructions, trying not to choke on my food from laughter. I tried to think of anything to say, but all I did was open my mouth before he stopped me with, "Nope, nope, 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 nope." When I later learned that RD, Raccoon Dog, had gotten in touch with her, my mother threw the biggest fit, accusing me of lying to her about spending Thanksgiving with her children. It seems that during the same phone call where I yelled at her, she was fined $2,000 by the courtesy officer assigned by my landlord. And to make matters worse, her husband had to pay $3,500 to bail her out of jail, and she was hit with an additional $7,500 fine for trespassing, resisting arrest, and threatening violence toward a police officer. Yes, I didn't even have to do anything, yet I am the expletive worst. It all began with a random, unsolicited phone call in the middle of the night a couple of months ago, and I'm still struggling to put the situation into words, and I'm trying to persuade myself that it really happened. The piece de resistance. 2 days ago, her children created a group chat on one of my social media accounts with the three of us, apologizing for their crazy mother and all the crap she said about me spending time with them. Did you think that was the best part? No. They said that what happened on Thanksgiving was the last straw for them, even though they had been wanting to apologize on her behalf for some time but were so ashamed that they decided to just leave me alone. These kids spent most of their Thanksgiving sitting in a car in front of a random apartment complex, and then they sat in a police station for an indeterminate amount of time until their dad could come get them. They knew their mom would be in jail overnight and that bailing her out would blow half their Christmas fund. Which, yeah, imagine spending Thanksgiving stuck in a spectacle of pure insanity brought on by your delusional mother. "There's a really great pizza place up the street," was all I could reply. "I'm off next Friday and it's on me. I'm not sure what your schedules look like this weekend. I have a pizza date and a restraining order. A match made in heaven." This whole thing has been such a cluster expletive dumpster explosion, and I hope you all liked sitting in it with me as much as I enjoyed writing it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My husband finally cut ties with his toxic mom and sister after they demanded we give up our house for my jobless sister-in-law and her family. My in-laws have a very toxic connection with my spouse, and it is beginning to ruin my life. Growing up, my husband was my mother-in-law's favorite, the golden child, and she was very close to him. Jacob has informed me that because his father was so busy at work, he and his mother spent a lot of time together. However, I've noticed that his sister, Sarah, is not treated equally by my mother-in-law. Although I am confident that my mother-in-law loves both of her children, I have repeatedly observed that she prioritizes my husband. I'm sure Sarah felt the same way growing up, which is why my husband has always attempted to fill the void by being a kind elder brother to her and always being there for her. But the truth is that Sarah and my mother-in-law would sometimes behave in such a ridiculous manner that it crossed the line. For example, when we initially started dating, Jacob, a recent college graduate, and my in-laws, including Sarah, shared a house. My in-laws had offered my husband a totally own level so that he could have his own privacy and welcome whomever he pleased. This is why he would occasionally invite me to his home to spend the night with him. However, several times in the morning, Sarah would storm into our room while we were asleep without knocking. As you may guess, we were not always properly dressed, but she would act as if everything was normal and begin talking to Jacob about utterly random topics. This was very strange for me because I was uncomfortable with her seeing me in my lingerie. Before anyone points out, I absolutely understand that Jacob was living with his family at the time, so I should have expected this, but is knocking on the door before entering really that much to ask? I suppose siblings can be quite close, but she and I didn't know each other very well when Jacob and I first started dating, so I thought it was really rude. Naturally, I spoke with Jacob about it and informed him that I would not be going over unless he installed a lock on his door. He agreed, but as you can guess, Sarah, who attempted to storm into the room the next morning but was unsuccessful, began ranting at us about why the door was locked. She began jiggling and hammering on the door, begging her brother to let her in. Jacob eventually let her in, and she stormed into the room asking why he had set the lock in the first place. When she recognized me, she pointed to me and began ranting at him, asking if it was because of this skank. I was astonished by how harsh and insulting she sounded. Jacob told Sarah that he wanted to install the door lock, but Sarah was not convinced. She angrily informed him that they were siblings and should not keep any secrets between them. Jacob told her that he had no secrets and that he had put the lock so she wouldn't barge in when we were asleep, which was quite disturbing. Sarah violently flipped her head towards me and exclaimed that it was all my fault, saying that I was interfering with her and her brother. This was too much for me, as I am generally non-confrontational, so I excused myself to visit the restroom. I could hear her yelling with Jacob attempting to calm her. When she eventually left, Jacob came in to comfort me. He apologized for her actions and informed me that he would speak with her again, so she could apologize to me as well. When I arrived the following weekend, Sarah apologized and offered me a pitiful excuse, claiming that she needed to speak with Jacob urgently and so believed it would be good for me to come in. Jacob forcefully asked her not to bother us again, and she agreed sheepishly. Although this issue appeared to be remedied, it was not the only strange conduct she demonstrated towards Jacob. If Jacob and I differed on something, even something as trivial as movies, and Sarah was around, she would begin telling him that he should date someone with comparable likes, meaning that we were unsuitable for each other. Jacob would give her a condemning look, but she would simply smirk. Another episode was Sarah asking me awkward questions about my background in an attempt to delve into my life. Jacob and I had been open about our past since the beginning, but I didn't feel comfortable addressing it with his sister. Regardless of my thoughts, she would ask me questions like, "Why did your ex break up with you?" Or, "Were you not suitable for him?" She would even make remarks like, "My brother's previous girlfriend was far more attractive than you." All of these queries and comments arose when she and I were alone. I began to suspect that she was trying to play a game with me, bringing me down. I initially kept my lips shut, but as the situation progressed, I had enough. One day, I responded to her taunting by stating, "I liked my ex-boyfriend's family better than Jacob's because he didn't have nosy, overbearing family members." Sarah was taken aback by my reply, which temporarily silenced her. Even though Sarah had a strange relationship with my husband, my mother-in-law was no exception. When I first entered Jacob's life, my mother-in-law ignored me, but once she discovered we were serious, she began acting as if I was attempting to steal her son away. She would purposefully ignore me at dinners and family gatherings as if I did not exist. Jacob saw this occasionally and tried to talk to her, but she never changed. My mother-in-law once referred to me as stuck-up and spoiled, just because my parents put me to a private school while she was a public school teacher. I also know she tried to talk Jacob out of marrying me, telling him he should look for a better spouse. Fortunately, my spouse did not care about her view and proposed to me nonetheless. My mother-in-law and Sarah were shocked to learn that Jacob had proposed. Both contacted me, telling me that it was a horrible decision and that because Jacob wouldn't listen to them, I should quit the relationship and return the ring. I found this quite strange and declined, stating that they were crossing a line by asking me to do something like that when I loved Jacob and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. When they realized they couldn't persuade me, my mother-in-law reluctantly changed her mind, telling me that I should strive to be the best wife for him and care for him in the same manner she did for years. I was rather offended, but I tried not to take her remarks too seriously. Sarah, on the other hand, accused me of being a gold digger, and claimed her brother deserved someone with higher status. She even threatened to expose me before our wedding so Jacob would not marry me. Following this conversation, I immediately spoke with Jacob about everything. He was taken aback by how disrespectful they were towards me. He challenged them, but my mother-in-law and Sarah continued to believe that I was unsuitable for him. Jacob told me to disregard them, assuring me that he loved me regardless of their opinions. Despite his reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already chosen to pay for our wedding ourselves, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the cost, we politely declined. Jacob explained how hard we had worked to save money specifically for this occasion. Instead of being happy for us, she became even more angry, and she began telling Jacob how sad she was that he no longer needed her. However, Jacob's father appeared to be quite pleased with us. Unlike his sister and mother, his father was very calm and never had any issues with our connection. Since my mother-in-law continued to complain to Jacob, we made a compromise by telling her that we would love for her to organize the rehearsal dinner for us. She agreed, and we appreciated her generosity. However, when the wedding approached, events took an unexpected turn. The first instance came when Sarah invited herself to join us for supper, telling Jacob how much she missed him. Jacob and I were living on our own following our engagement, so we assumed she genuinely wanted to spend time with her brother. We agreed, and Jacob asked me directly if I was comfortable with having supper with her. I reluctantly consented, not wanting to be nasty to my soon-to-be sister-in-law. While we were enjoying our dinner, Sarah abruptly began discussing how much she despised cheating partners, claiming that cheaters were nothing but useless pieces of trash. We stared at her, curious about where she was headed with this. Then, out of nowhere, she looked me directly in the eyes and asked how it felt to be a useless piece of trash. My brow furrowed in perplexity as Sarah began to rant, accusing me of having an affair with my coworker, Zach. Jacob, also perplexed, asked her what she meant by saying Sarah proudly hauled out photos of me and one of my coworkers, waving them around and claiming that she had caught me red-handed. I knew I'd never been unfaithful to Jacob, so I was curious as to why she assumed I was having an affair. Looking through the photos, they appeared to be entirely innocent. It's true that Zach and I were close coworkers, but only because we started at the same time and helped each other out when we made mistakes so our manager wouldn't criticize us. Zach even had a girlfriend, which Jacob knew about. I don't have a lock on my phone, and I've always been open with Jacob about all of my colleagues. Sarah had turned these pleasant moments caught in photographs into something they were not, evidence of a fictitious affair. In truth, they were far from it. Her false charges irritated me since it was obvious she was attempting to damage my reputation and disrupt my connection with Jacob. Before I could defend myself, Jacob, stunned and plainly upset, moved in to help. He questioned Sarah why she was following me around and photographing me with my coworkers in public places without their permission. When Sarah heard this, she began rationalizing her behavior, claiming she simply wanted to investigate me because I was not of their status, and she was scared I was marrying Jacob to steal his money. Jacob told her unequivocally that her charges were false and that she was creating extra drama out of nothing. He tried to reason with her, telling her to stop spreading lies and attempting to destroy our relationship, but Sarah insisted that Jacob open his eyes to the obvious affair that was going on. I also tried to clarify that we were only coworkers, but Sarah insisted on her charges. As her charges grew more serious, the environment became strained. I had had enough and informed her that I was going to make a police report against her for illegally photographing and stalking me. Her look grew terrified as she inquired whether I was serious. I informed her I had all of the evidence. She had purposely tracked me and took these images without my permission, attempting to slander me with ludicrous lies. Sarah stared at Jacob and then back at me, arguing that she did everything to protect her brother and that it wasn't a big deal. She began imploring Jacob to speak with me, worried that if I filed a complaint, it would jeopardize her profession and future. I strongly told her that she could only save herself at this time. Sarah inquired what I wanted. I assured her I wouldn't pursue the complaint if she kept away from my life. Sarah had no other option for escaping the situation at that point. She looked to her brother for support, but Jacob defended me, telling her that she should be grateful I was willing to let it go because what she had done was clearly wrong. Sarah reluctantly agreed to stay away from me, and we have not spoken since that day. Jacob still has a relationship with her, but she has never spoken to me again. The second incident occurred shortly before our wedding at the rehearsal dinner. My mother-in-law, who had insisted on planning the meal, rebuffed our offer of assistance in any manner. She told us that she would take care of everything. However, when we arrived, it was evident that the preparations were far from what we had anticipated. The rehearsal dinner had plastic tablecloths on picnic tables and chilled Mexican food. My mother-in-law was upset throughout dinner, which marred the festive atmosphere. She drank excessively and began behaving inappropriately with the guests, repeatedly stating how she couldn't wait for the wedding to end and how stressful it had been, despite the fact that she had not contributed monetarily or assisted with the planning. Eventually, my father-in-law became irate and escorted her away. Sarah attempted to excuse her mother's actions, but my father-in-law refused to listen. As you might guess, the entire affair was a fiasco, and I began to worry that both my mother-in-law and Sarah would wreck the wedding the next day. That night, Jacob and I had our first disagreement. I informed him strongly that he needed to uninvite Sarah and his mother because, based on their actions, they would surely try to overshadow us at the wedding. My husband angrily protested, promising me that his father would be present and would not allow them to get away with it. Frustrated, I promised that if he didn't uninvite them, there would be no wedding the following day. Jacob was plainly taken aback by my demand, and even knowing how extreme I sounded, I was concerned about what they might do. I did not want to be embarrassed again in front of my family and friends on our wedding day. Jacob definitely lacked firm boundaries, but I hoped that this ultimatum would make him realize how much his family was interfering with our relationship. Thankfully, Jacob understood and made the proper decision. He called his father early in the morning to inform him that his mother and sister were uninvited. Phil didn't appear startled and promised Jacob that he'd make sure my mother-in-law and Sarah didn't show up there unexpectedly. Shortly after our chat with Phil, my mother-in-law and Sarah began contacting Jacob constantly, apparently trying to persuade him to let them attend the wedding. However, Jacob forcefully told them that he did not feel comfortable having them there because of how they had treated me throughout our relationship. Hearing this, my mother-in-law began accusing me of being a terrible influence and interfering with her relationship with her son. Sarah attempted to argue with him, but Jacob was certain in his decision. I felt horrible that Phil couldn't attend our wedding because of his wife and children. I even felt sorry about issuing the ultimatum, but all of my remorse vanished when I discovered from some of Jacob's cousins that Sarah and my mother-in-law had intended to wear white dresses to our wedding. The cousins informed me that in their family WhatsApp group, which only had female members, Sarah had encouraged the others to wear white as well, stating there was no reason for the bride to be the only one. I was astounded by how low they would go just to hurt me. After knowing this, I was relieved they hadn't been invited. Jacob missed his family, but he could see where I was coming from. Overall, we had a lovely wedding, and no one tried to outdo us. Since that day, my mother-in-law and Sarah have stopped talking to me entirely, which I am absolutely okay with. They only invited Jacob around for dinner or special events, which didn't bother me at all. Phil, on the other hand, was always kind to me, and we stayed in touch over the years. Jacob and I painstakingly saved money and finally purchased a new home this year. It was our first home, and we were overjoyed to own something so meaningful. Jacob's parents and Sarah did come to visit for a modest housewarming celebration, but I went to see my parents and spent time with my family instead. Now to the major point. My mother-in-law contacted me unexpectedly last month. This was really surprising because Mom and I hadn't spoken since the day I married Jacob. Surprisingly, she casually inquired about my well-being and life circumstances. I was taken aback by her unexpected interest, but I responded pleasantly. Then she questioned how it felt to live in such a spacious house with only Jacob and myself. Her remark stung since Jacob and I had been trying to conceive for a long time but were unable to do so owing to infertility concerns. Jacob and I had mourned the thought of never having children, but we gradually accepted it. When I first got the news, I informed Jacob that if he wanted to marry someone else and have children, he could divorce me, but Jacob had always stayed by me, assuring me that it was fine to be childless as long as we had each other. Our families were aware of this, so my mother-in-law's comment was very painful. She then told me Sarah was pregnant again. I was astonished because this would be her 6th child. Jacob had told me how her husband was unemployed and did not believe in using contraception, which resulted in these accidental pregnancies. Sarah's boyfriend was the embodiment of laziness, doing nothing around the house to aid her or the kids. I've heard from Jacob that he treats Sarah like a personal maid. He never pays any bills in the house. Sarah works many part-time jobs while he spends the entire day gaming. Regardless of how much everyone has talked to her, Sarah never breaks up with him. My mother-in-law then went on to add that because Sarah could no longer afford to work during her pregnancy, she thought Jacob and I should give up our apartment because it was too big for a childless couple like us. I was caught aback by her demand and struggled to find words. I inquired whether she was joking, but my mother-in-law responded that she was serious, that Sarah and her husband deserved to live in a larger house. However, because she did not have enough space in her own home to accommodate them, she invited them to come in with us. The weight of her news weighed in the air as I fought to keep my composure in the midst of the emotional storm. I emphasized to her that this was our house, which we were still paying for, and the idea of someone else moving in without our permission was intrusive and ludicrous. However, my mother-in-law said that she had already spoken with Jacob, who had allegedly consented to this. This was strange because Jacob and I were always open with each other, and I knew he would have told me if he had agreed to let his sister and her family stay with us. I firmly told my mother-in-law that because the house belonged to both me and Jacob, he couldn't grant permission without my agreement. No one was allowed to reside here unless both of us agreed. To reach a solution, I told her that I would be pleased to accommodate Sarah and her husband for a few days if they wished, but that they could not stay permanently. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, began yelling, arguing that, as a responsible daughter-in-law, I was required to make room for Sarah and her husband. She also assured me that if I complied with her demands, all previous troubles would be forgiven. In rage, I cynically said, "Sure, I'll be pleased to let them take our place, but you see, we're still paying for it, and I'm confident that if Sarah and her husband move in, they will not assist with the mortgage or bills. So, how about you take some responsibility and contribute to their living expenses? I'd be grateful if you could just cover the mortgage and we manage the rest. Of course, with only one job, you'll definitely need a second one to cover the home payments. Please let me know when you intend to get that second job." Hearing this, my mother-in-law exploded in wrath, shouting and voicing her dissatisfaction. She said it was crazy of me to want her to pay the mortgage, and I responded that it was equally ridiculous for her to expect us to care for Sarah's family and allow them to move in. This infuriated her even more, and she continued to yell while I smiled with satisfaction. She eventually disconnected the call when she saw I wouldn't give in to her demands. Soon after, Sarah called and yelled at me for daring to ask her mother to pay our mortgage. She went on to add that she had always known I was a gold digger. I informed her that she was the gold digger, attempting to live with us without contributing. I added that if she wanted to know who the true gold digger was, she could look at her own partner who did nothing to assist her. This appeared to silence her. I firmly told Sarah that she could argue with me all she wanted, but I would never let her family into our home unless they agreed to help with the mortgage. She accused me of being cruel and putting money before family. The tables had turned, and I was relieved at the thought of sticking up for myself and refusing to back down, taking control of my home. However, I feel a little awful thinking about my ex-husband, and I'm here on Reddit wondering if what I've done makes me the villain. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who has expressed their support. To answer the most crucial question that everyone keeps asking, why would my mother-in-law demand such a stupid thing of us? It's because she has always been so entitled. Clearly, my husband has tolerated this charade for far too long, and he and I need to sit down and have a serious discussion about it. It's heartbreaking how my mother-in-law can lie about her own kid in order to get her way. My sister-in-law is a pawn in her game, doing whatever her mother-in-law wishes because my mother-in-law has always favored my husband. Sarah simply listens to what her mother says in the hopes of garnering favor as well. In this situation, Sarah stood to benefit because she could rely on us to pay her expenses and care for her children while her useless husband did nothing. I'm waiting for my spouse to return from his business trip so we can discuss. I do not want to discuss this over the phone since it is too important. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I last updated. As I indicated earlier, I was waiting for my husband to return. When he returned, we finally sat down and talked. I told him how his mother had called and demanded that we give up our house to his sister and her family. Jacob was definitely taken aback, so I gave him the whole story. He subsequently said that he had no idea about any of it. Prior to his journey, his mother had only told him that his sister was pregnant. That was all he knew about the situation, and he had no idea his mother would make such unreasonable demands. I informed him forcefully that I expected him to speak with his mother and deal with the matter because I couldn't bear his family anymore. He agreed. Jacob confronted his mother and questioned why she had lied to me about him. When caught red-handed, my mother-in-law attempted to backtrack, claiming that she had not actually lied. She said that she knew Jacob would have no objections to his sister staying with us, so she took matters into her own hands and approached me personally. Jacob stopped her off and questioned why she thought he would be fine with Sarah and her entire family coming in. My mother-in-law explained that because Jacob and Sarah were close, he would naturally want to support her by allowing her family to come in. Hearing this, I closed my eyes in disgust but remained silent, allowing Jacob to handle his mother. Jacob then firmly told her that he was not going to let Sarah, her unemployed husband, and their 6 children move in with us. He also stated that she had no authority to compel us to take care of them. My mother-in-law started yelling, stating Sarah desperately needed aid at this time, but Jacob informed her it was not our job, and if she wanted to help, she could care for Sarah herself. My mother-in-law then said that Phil didn't want them in their small house, although we lived in a larger house and could easily help out. She even had the audacity to suggest that since I was childless, assisting Sarah's children would make me feel fulfilled. My eyes widened with surprise, but for the first time, I noticed Jacob's face shift color. He raged at her, stating she had no right to say such rude things about me and couldn't use it to compel me to care for Sarah's children. Jacob went on to say that Phil didn't want anything to do with Sarah since she had turned into a childbirthing machine and that he was over both of them. My mother-in-law tried to backtrack again, but Jacob would not have it. He informed her that he had done his best to keep a positive connection with them, even after they had repeatedly disrespected me, but he couldn't take it any longer. My mother-in-law begged him, but Jacob assured her that this was our home and I was his wife. Anyone that offended me disrespected him as well, and they did not deserve to be in his life. Jacob ended the call with those final words. Since then, he has not spoken with Sarah or his mother. Phil summoned Jacob to speak, and after hearing the entire story, he understood why Jacob had made such a severe move. Phil apologized to me on behalf of his wife, but I informed him that it was not his responsibility. Update 3. It has been an interesting 2 weeks. A lot of people suggested that I install cameras around our house in case my mother-in-law and Sarah wanted to show up and cause a commotion. So, I purchased several cameras online and installed them. As luck would have it, they showed up last weekend, banging on my door while I was alone at home. When I saw them through the camera, I quickly called Jacob, who told me he was on his way. I answered the door, and there they were, my mother-in-law and Sarah, both furious. They requested that I let them in, but I refused and told them that if they had anything to say, they could do so from the outside. My mother-in-law began ranting at me, accusing me of being callous, greedy, and selfish. I politely informed her that this was our home, and they had no right to enter uninvited. She continued her tirade, unknowing that the cameras were recording every moment. I reminded her of our prior chat, emphasizing that I would not give up our house for Sarah and her family, and that if she had anything else to say, she could wait for Jacob's return. Sarah then began yelling, accusing me of breaking up the family for no reason, being a gold digger, and attempting to take her brother away from them. I informed them that everything they said was being recorded, and that I would use the footage to obtain a restraining order if necessary. Their eyes widened in surprise as my mother-in-law exclaimed that I wouldn't dare to do that. I smirked and informed her that if they did not leave the property immediately, They would receive a legal notice very soon. This worried them, and Sarah tried to convince me that I was overreacting, saying that it wasn't a big problem. Fortunately, Jacob came at that exact moment. He approached them casually, asking what they were doing. My mother-in-law raced to hug him, but he resisted and forcefully demanded why they had come. Sarah stated that I was attempting to control his life by separating him from them and that they had come to face me. Jacob reiterated that it was his decision to avoid touch, and he did not want anything to do with either of them. My mother-in-law begged for forgiveness, but Jacob merely told them to leave the property or he would call the cops. They were visibly taken aback, apparently not anticipating this reaction from him. Jacob went on to say that if they ever came up at our house again, we would contact the police and have them removed forcibly. They fled, devastated, but Jacob no longer cared. I was relieved that my spouse had finally spoken up for me. Jacob has now spoken with Phil, who was as surprised as we were that my mother-in-law and Sarah had gone behind his back to show up unexpectedly. Phil informed us that we were correct not to let them in and expressed disgust with their behavior. With Jacob being so stern about kicking them out, I doubt they'll dare to return to our property. If they do, I will contact a lawyer right away. I am relieved that my husband has finally learned how toxic his family is, and I hope this is my final update. I'm ready to move on from this circumstance and continue our lives peacefully. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My brother, Tony, was the ultimate protector. When I was 10, some goons tried to snatch him. I ended up in their car instead. They got their ransom, but not before they'd carved up my face and broken both my legs. Tony went ballistic. He took over the family business, Dad's organization if you catch my drift, and built it into something huge. I became his world, his untouchable treasure. Someone laughed at my scars. Tony shoved his head into a trash bag full of rats, let them chew his face to a bloody mess. Some wise guy badmouthed my limp. Tony ran a freaking steamroller over his legs, turned him to hamburger. Tony was the boogeyman of the whole damn tri-state area, but he treated me like I was made of spun gold. He spent a fortune sending me overseas for reconstructive surgery, physical therapy, and a fancy college education. Right before graduation, I got a wedding invitation from Tony. He was all excited, said I was going to have a sister-in-law to spoil me rotten. He even sent a picture of the lady. But the second I walked into the house, his fiancée, this ice queen named Brittany, busted in with a crew of muscleheads. She thought I was Tony's kept woman from overseas and decided to teach me a lesson. Tony showed up mid-beat down. Brittany pointed at me lying on the floor and wailed, "Am I not good enough for you, Tony? Choose her or me." Tony's eyes went dark. "You got more lives than a cat." Bang! The patio door shattered, and a bunch of bruisers barged in, looking like they were ready to start a war. I gasped, then recognized the woman leading them. Brittany, my soon-to-be sister-in-law from the photos Tony sent. Before I could even say hello, she swung a freaking baseball bat straight into my face. Pain exploded in my nose and warm liquid trickled down. Blood. A sucker punch like that sent my head swimming. "There you are, you little gold digger. Thought you could hide out in Europe forever. Didn't think you'd ever come back to mooch off Tony's money." Brittany screamed. She raised the bat again, aiming for my head and body. I scrambled back, shielding my head, tripping over the rug and landing on my butt. "You've got it all wrong, She shoved the bat in my mouth, twisted it. Pain ripped through my gums and teeth, and the taste of blood filled my throat. I choked and spat out a mouthful of red. "Wrong my ass. Don't think I don't know you conned Tony into buying you this mansion. You think I am stupid? You know I'm marrying Tony, and you come back trying to steal him from me." She kicked me in the ribs, sending me sprawling. My head smacked against the edge of the coffee table, cracking it open. I was furious and terrified. Gulping down the blood, I blurted out, "You really have the wrong idea. I'm Tony's sister." "A sister? Like a good little nun." But Brittany laughed sarcastically. One of her goons leaned in and whispered, "I did hear the boss had a sister out of the country, but nobody's ever seen her. Something about the accident." Brittany sneered at my face. "Sister my ass. She doesn't look anything like Tony. Just then, a woman walked in, Tony's right-hand woman, Frankie. She'd been with Tony forever. She'd recognized me. "Frankie, help me. It's me, Amy." Frankie did a double take. "Who the hell is this? How does she know me?" Frankie was hesitant, but before I could finish, Brittany smacked me hard across the mouth with the bat again. I clutched my bleeding mouth, unable to speak. Just a little tart who heard us talking, trying to get a leg up. Frankie shook her head. "No," she said, "she was Amy. Only family calls her that. This doesn't make sense." She hurried to me, grabbed my face, studying me hard. "Doesn't look like Tony's sister." My heart sank. This was my new face, the one she hadn't seen. "Wait a minute. She got major surgery in Europe, didn't she? Changed her whole face." Frankie finally put it together. I nodded like a maniac, hoping desperately that she'd understand. "Yes, I'm his sister, Amy." Brittany waved her hand. "A surgery? Every chick who wants a meal ticket has that. Don't be gullible." Frankie held up a hand to stop her. "Faces can be fake. IDs can be fake. Let's find out who this really is." Two of Brittany's thugs grabbed me, ready to search me. I struggled, and she slapped me. "Hold still, you. Tie her up." They bound my hands. Since the accident, Tony never let anyone touch me, and he would have had their hands hacked off if he saw this. Frankie was still cautious. Why beat her up this bad? What if she really is his sister? Brittany smiled weakly and offered her a cigarette. "Relax, we're getting married. He will forgive me for being protective." Frankie nodded, taking the cigarette. "True." They grabbed my wallet. Brittany snatched it open and laughed. "See? I knew it." Frankie peered over her shoulder and said, "Jennifer Smith." Then she flipped to my college ID. "Jennifer Smith? Not Amy." My heart went cold. After the accident, Tony had my name and records changed, even moving the address of where I lived. He hadn't told anyone. I wasn't a Smith. I was supposed to be Amy Costello, and I was his baby sister. Frankie's eyes hardened. "You tried to con us? Get her." They threw me on the floor, fists flying. My phone fell out of my pocket. When the screen lit up, Frankie saw my wallpaper. Her face changed in an instant. "Wait!" It was a picture of Tony and me. Frankie trembled as she picked it up. "This your phone?" I nodded so hard I thought my head would fall off. Brittany rolled her eyes. "It's just a picture. She probably photoshopped it, trying to fool us." I tried to show Frankie my texts. She unlocked my phone with my face, opening my texts with Tony. "Her contact name for Tony is Bro," Frankie exclaimed, shocked. Brittany grabbed my phone. "Every tart calls the big guy Bro to get in his wallet. Don't believe her." She scrolled again, and her face turned red with rage. "He bought you a mansion? He calls you baby? He says he never wants to be apart from you? Like I said, a good little a-hole, but she doesn't know her place. Tony loved me. Since the attack, he never wanted me to go overseas again. Ever since, no one touched me. But here I was, being beaten by his fiancée, unable to call for help. My heart broke and I sobbed. Frankie frowned. "She's got the princess thing down. Let's double check. Maybe he's nuts about his sister. If this is her, we are screwed." Brittany agreed. "Fine, I'll call him. If she is Tony's sister, fine. But if she ain't." Her face went ugly. "She's going to regret the day she was born." She ordered her goons to gag me and called Tony. "Hey babe, you said your sister was coming for the wedding. What day is she flying in? I want to get her a present so I can welcome her." Tony answered, "She's flying in tomorrow night." A chill ran down my spine. I changed my flight to surprise Tony, and I was here now. Brittany glared at me. If she hung up, it was over. I bit down on my gag as hard as I could. The goon yelped and let go. "Tony, help me!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. Brittany's face went white. She kicked me, putting her heel on my mouth. "That's just the TV, my love. Amy comes tomorrow night." The phone went dead, and I felt hope fade. Her heel ground into my mouth harder and harder. "You trying to screw me?" I almost believed you. Her eyes met mine, filled with jealousy. He already decided to marry me, but he still bought you a house. I will make you hurt. She pulled back her leg. The boss always takes care of his women. Since he likes her, let's let her live. You'll be his wife, and he'll have some fun. Frankie agreed. You can be the boss, and he will have some fun. I wanted to curse them. How could they think Tony and I would ever have something beyond a brother and sister? I hated Brittany for thinking that. She was everything Tony always warned me about. Once I saw him, I would make him call off the wedding. Brittany saw the rage in my eyes and exploded. You want to mess with me? I will make you hurt. She grabbed a knife and slashed my face. No! I screamed in pain, but Brittany didn't stop. When you're ugly, Tony will only love me. Each cut was like being stabbed in the gut. Took 3 years of surgery to make my face right again, and she was gonna ruin it. You're dead? I whispered, and Brittany laughed. Screw you. She sliced my lips, and I felt them split open. Brittany pulled back the knife. She stepped back, and I heard a voice. Boss? What are you doing here? It was Tony. Tony was here. I struggled to get up, but my legs gave out. Brittany kicked me in the knees with the iron bar, and my legs failed. Frankie panicked, telling her to hide me. If he sees you, he'll kill you. Brittany and the goons dragged me to the kitchen. No sooner had they shut the sliding door than Tony walked in. I told you to get the house fixed up. Where is everything? I just got here. The stuff's in the car. Frankie rushed out to unload the car. Tony looked around. Yeah, he likes the place. Is this the kitchen? Tony asked the designer and grabbed the door. I saw his outline through the glass and tears burst out. Tony, you have to save me. You? He slowly opened the door. His face changed when he saw Brittany and me. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Brittany, still holding the knife, her face twisted in a mix of fury and satisfaction. Me on the floor, my face covered in blood, feeling the cuts burn like fire, my legs useless after the hit with the iron bar. Tony's eyes darkened. What the hell is this? His voice was low, almost a whisper, but so full of rage that it sent a chill down my spine. Brittany immediately dropped the knife as if it burned her and raised her hands in a gesture of false innocence. Tony, baby, this isn't what it looks like. But Tony didn't even glance at her. His eyes were locked on me. I could barely speak. My mouth was swollen. My lips split. My throat filled with blood. I tried to say his name, but all that came out was a weak, broken sound. Frankie and the other thugs stood frozen, unsure whether to run or stay and watch hell unfold. Tony moved forward slowly, each step echoing in the silent kitchen. He knelt beside me, his fingers trembling as he touched my face. Amy, I barely nodded, because any movement sent a wave of searing pain through my entire body. Tony closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to hold something back. When he opened them again, there was no more doubt, only fury. He stood up abruptly, and without warning, his fist crashed into Brittany's face. She fell to the floor with a strangled cry, clutching her now bloody mouth. Tony, I don't understand. That a-hole tried to fool you. Fool me? Tony's voice was almost gentle, but I knew what that meant. It was the same voice he used before unloading an entire clip into the face of the man who kidnapped me when I was 10. Brittany scrambled backward, trying to put distance between them. She said she was your sister, but she didn't look like you. We couldn't take any risks. Tony ran a hand through his hair, taking a deep breath like he was trying to keep himself in check. And that justified this? He asked, tilting his head toward me. Frankie, who had been silent until now, took a hesitant step forward. Boss, we made a mistake. She changed her face after the accident. We didn't know. You didn't know? Tony let out a hollow laugh. So, because you didn't recognize my sister, you decided to beat her half to death? Tony, please. Brittany whimpered, tears spilling from her eyes. Shut up, he said, his voice sharp as a blade. Brittany sobbed, but no one moved to help her. Frankie looked down. Everyone in the room knew they were screwed. Tony bent down again, lifting me in his arms with more care than I thought possible. My body screamed in protest, and I let out a weak pain sound. "You're going to be okay, Amy," he murmured, his voice soft, completely at odds with the fury in his eyes. But I wasn't okay. I had never been more broken in my life. Tony gently placed me in a chair. Then he straightened up, scanning the room. "Close the door," he ordered. One of his men rushed to obey. Brittany started crying harder. "Tony, no, please." But he didn't even flinch. His gaze turned to Frankie. "Who else do I need to bury today?" Frankie raised her hands, stepping back. "Boss, we messed up." "Messed up?" Tony's voice turned even colder. "And what would have happened if I hadn't shown up?" Frankie didn't answer. Tony looked back at Brittany. "You love me, don't you? You wanted to protect me?" She nodded frantically. "Yes, I just wanted to make sure no one took advantage of you." Tony tilted his head as if considering her words. "Then tell me, Brittany," his voice dropped to a whisper, "how should I protect myself from you?" Brittany's sobs turned into desperate screams. "Tony, please, I love you. We're getting married." Tony smiled, but his smile was empty. "No, we're not." And without hesitation, he pulled out his gun. Brittany screamed, but her cry was cut off by the gunshot. Blood splattered against the wall, the floor, my shoes. Her body crumpled to the ground like a broken doll. Frankie and the others turned pale. "Does anyone else have something to explain?" Tony asked, wiping his blood-stained hands with a napkin. No one spoke. "Good." Then he turned to me. "Let's go home, Amy." I wanted to tell him that home didn't exist anymore, that everything I had been through had broken me in ways he couldn't fix. But I didn't have the strength to speak. Tony carried me in his arms and walked out of the house, leaving behind the chaos, the blood, the past. I closed my eyes and let the pain consume me. Tony carried me out of the house, and the world around me seemed to spin. The pain in my face throbbed, my legs were useless, and the metallic taste of blood in my mouth was almost unbearable. But none of that compared to what I felt inside. Rage, betrayal, hatred. He placed me in the back seat of the car as carefully as possible, as if I were made of glass. But I wasn't fragile anymore, not after this. "You're going to be okay, Amy," he said, his voice rough, almost like a promise. But how could I be okay? My own sister-in-law had nearly destroyed me, and the only reason I was still breathing was because Tony had arrived in time. What if he had been 5 minutes late? I would have just been another mistake to cover up. Frankie and the thugs stayed behind. I didn't need to ask what Tony would do with them. Anyone who betrayed his trust never got a second chance. The car sped off, and I rested my head against the window, feeling the cuts burn even more. "They're going to pay," Tony said after several minutes of silence. I laughed, but my mouth ached. "They already have. Brittany has been exposed." Brittany was just the beginning. I looked at him, feeling my heartbeat quicken. "What else are you going to do?" Tony didn't answer immediately. His fingers gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. "Do you want justice, Amy?" I wanted something bigger. "I want everyone who knew about this to suffer." My voice came out cold. Tony smirked. "Then you're going to love what I have planned." I should have felt guilty. A normal person would. But I wasn't a normal person anymore. The following weeks were a blur of recovery and revenge. Tony put me in the best hospital in the city, with top-tier doctors and nurses taking care of me 24/7. But he didn't sit around waiting while I was stuck in bed. Everyone involved in my attacks started to feel the consequences. Brittany's thugs were fired from every job even remotely connected to Tony's organization. None of them could find work anywhere in the city. Anyone who tried to help them received a clear message. If you protect a traitor, you pay for it. Frankie tried to flee the city, but Tony caught her first. "I never touched her," Frankie screamed when Tony placed her in front of me. I was still in a wheelchair, but my expression was nothing but pure disdain. "But you watched." My voice was low but filled with contempt. "And you doubted me." Tony stood still, waiting for my decision. "What do we do with her?" he asked. I looked at Frankie, seeing the fear in her eyes. She knew she had no way out. "I'm not a monster, Frankie," I said. "But you knew what they were doing to me and you stayed silent." She opened her mouth to beg, but Tony motioned with his head. "You're out. No one will ever trust you again. You'll never work in this city again." She turned to Tony, desperate. "You can't take everything from me." Tony leaned in slightly. "You took everything from my sister. I'd say this is fair." Frankie left, but not before hearing my final words. I hope it was worth it. Days passed and news of what Brittany had done spread. We didn't need to do anything but let her deal with the consequences. Her reputation was ruined. The wedding was officially canceled, and everyone knew why. She tried to fix things, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, but no one wanted to be associated with someone who had attacked the wrong person. And then, when I was finally strong enough to leave the hospital, Tony made sure to give me something special. "This is yours," he said, handing me an envelope. I opened it and saw the ownership papers for the mansion. My name was on the document. "But you spent years away, Amy. You lost so much. This house, this money, it's not a gift. It's what was always yours." I sighed, holding the document. Tony would never let anyone take anything from me again. And when I finally returned to that house, I found no more ghosts. Brittany was gone, the traitors had fallen. And me? I was stronger than ever. No one really knows how much of what Tony said was true. All I know is that none of the people involved that night were ever seen again. No trace of Brittany, Frankie, or the thugs who hurt me. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. I asked Tony multiple times what had happened. He never gave me a clear answer. He would just give me that cold, unreadable look and say, "You don't need to know. You just need to know that you're safe now." I was supposed to feel relieved, right? To know that they would never have the chance to hurt me again. But it unsettled me. It felt like a part of my own story had been erased without my control. And Tony? Tony became even more protective after that night. At first, I understood. He had almost lost me, of course he would be on edge. But what started as concern quickly became suffocating. I couldn't go anywhere without him knowing. There were always bodyguards following me, even when I told him I didn't need them. I couldn't take a taxi alone, travel without his approval, or even go shopping without one of his men lurking nearby like a shadow. I tried to ignore it. I told myself he was just looking out for me. But over time, I realized it was more than that. It was control. And the worst part, it extended to who I let into my life. If I started dating someone, Tony would dig into their entire background. Where they lived, who they worked with, if they had any past issues. If he didn't like what he found, and he never liked what he found, those men simply disappeared from my life. First, I thought it was coincidence. Then I realized the truth. Tony was pushing them away. "You deserve better, Amy. They weren't good enough for you. And who decides that? I do." That was the moment I understood. No matter how much time passed, to Tony, I would never stop being his untouchable sister, the little girl he needed to protect from the world. But I wasn't a little girl anymore. I had recovered. I was walking again. My face no longer looked the same, and all I wanted was one thing: to live. But Tony couldn't accept that. And that's when I realized there was no place for me in the life he was trying to build for me. If I wanted freedom, I had to take it for myself. And so I did. Took me months to plan everything. I couldn't just walk away and expect him to accept it. I had to be strategic. So little by little, I started pulling away. I made friends outside his circle, saved money in an account he couldn't track, and when the day came, I left. No messages, no calls, no traces. I simply disappeared. I took a flight to a place where Tony had no influence over my life. For the first few days, he tried to find me. He called endlessly, sent messages, even showed up at my old house. But I wasn't there. He sent his men to track me down, but this time I was ready. I hid in places he couldn't reach me, and for the first time in his life, Tony had to accept that I was gone. I never hated him. Deep down, I knew he believed he was protecting me. But what he never understood was that protecting me didn't mean locking me up. I just wanted to be free. And now, finally, Now on to the next story. Story 5. I just turned 29 last weekend, and I thought I'd seen it all when it came to my family's drama. I was wrong. My name's Evan, and if you've ever had a birthday party turn into an ambush disguised as a family gathering, you'll probably understand where I'm coming from. It started normal enough. Cake on the counter, balloons my cousin's kids had tied up, the usual small talk about traffic and weather. I was actually feeling good for once. I bought my house 2 years ago after grinding through my 20s, working late nights, saving every bonus check. It's small, but it's mine. And I guess that's the problem. It's mine. Right after dinner, my mom stood up, tapped her wine glass like she was about to give a speech at a wedding, and said in this cheery voice that didn't match the words coming out of her mouth, "We all agree Evan should sell his house and give the money to your sister's baby fund. She needs it more." I swear for a second I thought she was joking. Everyone laughed. Except it wasn't the, "this is ridiculous" kind of laugh. It was the, "oh good, he's about to agree" laugh. My cousins actually clapped. My dad just smiled at me like he was proud of her for saying it. And my sister, well, she dabbed at fake tears with a napkin like she was in some bad soap opera. Inside, I felt this wave of heat run through me. Half anger, half disbelief. Who even says that out loud? I just sat there, my hand tightening around my glass. Nobody asked me. Nobody warned me. They just decided my life's work, the one thing that kept me sane, should be liquidated to bankroll my sister's life choices. "Evan," my mom said again, as if I hadn't heard her, "don't you think it's time you did something for the family? Your sister's baby is coming. She needs a proper nursery, a bigger house. It's not like you need so much space. You live alone." That last part hit me hard. I live alone because, frankly, I like my peace, but apparently that makes me the family's ATM now. My aunt leaned over and added, "Think of it as your gift to the next generation. It's a blessing." My uncle nodded. Everyone was looking at me. I took a slow sip of my drink, trying to keep my face neutral, but inside my mind was racing. Do they seriously expect me to sell the only asset I have? Just hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars? My sister sniffled dramatically. "I can't believe you'd even hesitate," she said. "You know, I've been struggling since Matt got laid off. We're barely keeping up with rent. You're comfortable. This would change everything for us." That word comfortable made my stomach turn. Comfortable? Sure. After skipping vacations, working overtime, eating noodles for a year just to get the down payment together. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a gift. And now they wanted me to just undo it. I glanced around the table. Not a single person looked like they thought this was outrageous. My dad raised his glass toward me. "You're the man now," he said, grinning. "Step up. Do right by your family." And that's when I realized this wasn't just a suggestion. This was a full-on intervention staged on my birthday in front of everyone to pressure me into agreeing. The air felt heavy. My chest was tight, but I didn't show it. Instead, I picked up my phone, unlocked it, and scrolled to something I had saved, something I hadn't planned to share tonight. "I actually got some news this morning," I said, standing up slowly. The room went quiet, all eyes on me. My mom beamed like I was about to announce I'd do exactly what she wanted. My sister straightened up, clutching her napkin like it was a tissue in a Hallmark movie. I cleared my throat, held my phone up, and started reading out loud the message I'd gotten from the bank that morning. The one that made my heart stop when I first saw it. And the second the first sentence left my mouth, every single fork and glass in that room went completely still. "The bank is confirming the transfer of funds you requested has been completed." I read, my voice calm, almost casual. "Full amount $428,000. Your mortgage has been paid off in full, and your house deed will be mailed to you within 5 business days." You could have heard a pin drop. My mom's smile froze on her face. My sister's fake tears dried up in an instant. My dad actually choked on his wine, and I just stood there holding my phone, letting the words hang in the air like smoke. I didn't plan it this way. Paying off the mortgage had been a quiet goal I'd been working toward for months. I didn't expect the timing to line up like this, but in that moment, it felt like fate. So I said, still standing, my glass in one hand, my phone in the other. You're asking me to sell something that's now completely mine, free and clear. You want me to hand over nearly $500,000 because you all, what? Took a vote when I wasn't here. Nobody spoke. Even the kids in the living room were quiet. My mom was the first to recover. That's wonderful news, sweetheart, she said in that patronizing tone she uses when she's about to say something awful. And now it's even easier. You can sell it for full value and give your sister a fresh start. I just stared at her. Did you not hear a single word I just read? My cousin Mark tried to lighten the mood with a laugh. Hey man, think of it as an investment in family happiness. You'll be Uncle Evan, the hero. Hero? I repeated. For making myself homeless? My sister crossed her arms. The napkin crumpled in her fist now. You wouldn't be homeless, she shot back. You could rent an apartment. It's just the two of you. Me? I cut in. It's just me. And renting is exactly what I worked for years to escape. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. I wasn't usually this direct with them, but something about that moment made me snap. Do you have any idea how long I saved for that house? How many nights I stayed late at work so I could afford the payments? And you sit here on my birthday telling me I should sell it because you think your needs matter more than my entire future. My dad put his hands up like he was the peacemaker. Nobody's saying you have to do it, son. We're just saying it would be the right thing. The right thing. That phrase landed like a punch. My whole life, that's been their line whenever they wanted me to fall in line. To give up a weekend to loan someone money. To skip something I wanted so my sister could have it instead. Funny? I said slowly, sitting back down. Because the right thing never seems to go both ways in this family. That stung. I saw my mom's jaw tighten. My aunt cleared her throat, but no one said a word. The tension at the table was thick, but for once, I didn't try to smooth it over. Dinner was basically over after that. People picked at their plates in silence. A few of my cousins avoided eye contact. My sister was fuming, whispering to my mom. I could see her husband squeezing her arm under the table, probably trying to get her to calm down. When the cake finally came out, the singing was half-hearted. I blew out the candles and the room stayed quiet. And in that silence, something clicked in my head. I realized this wasn't just a bad night. This was a pattern and it wasn't going to stop. If I gave an inch now, they'd expect a mile every time. And that's when the first thought of revenge started forming. Not the petty kind. Not yelling or slamming doors, but something bigger, smarter. I smiled to myself as I cut the cake. Thanks for coming, everyone, I said, my voice light. I'll be in touch. The look on my mom's face told me she knew something had shifted, that I wasn't going to just let this go. But she had no idea just how far I was willing to take it this time. A week passed after that birthday dinner, and I didn't hear a word from anyone. No casual texts, no memes from my cousins, nothing. It was the longest my phone had been this quiet in years. At first, I'll admit it felt good, peaceful even. But by day 4, my stomach started to sink. In my family, silence doesn't mean forgiveness. Silence means plotting. Sure enough, on Friday evening, my mom called. She didn't even bother with small talk. Your sister's been crying all week, she said, her voice loaded with accusation. She feels like you don't care about her or the baby. I do care, I said carefully, but I'm not going to sell my house. That's not negotiable. There was a pause on the line, just long enough to make me nervous. Well, my mom said, finally, you might want to sit down for this. Your father and I have been talking, and we think we found a solution that works for everyone. We spoke to a realtor. He says, you could get top market value right now if you sell quickly. It would be enough for you to help your sister and still rent a decent apartment. I actually laughed out loud. A sharp, bitter laugh that surprised even me. You what? We didn't do anything official, she said quickly, as if that made it better. We just had him look at the property online, and he said he has buyers lined up. Could close in under 60 days if you cooperate. Cooperate? Like this was some joint mission we were all on together. Mom, you don't get to cooperate me out of my own house. Her tone turned icy. You're being selfish, Evan. Your sister's about to bring a new life into this world. She's facing eviction and you have a house you don't even need. My hand tightened around the phone. Don't even need? I said slowly. Mom, this is my home, my safe place, the only thing that's mine. I nearly worked myself into the ground to afford this. And you think I should just throw it away because my sister had bad luck? She didn't have bad luck. My mom snapped. Matt losing his job wasn't his fault. And your sister's worked hard, too. She's going to be a mother. I'm happy for her, I said flatly. But I'm not sacrificing my future so she can have a baby shower with matching curtains. That earned me a cold silence, then a click as she hung up. For a moment, I just stood there staring at the dead phone line, feeling that familiar cocktail of guilt and anger. Growing up, that was always my role, the fixer, the one who gave up his spot, stayed home from the trip, lent out his stuff. My sister was the baby, the golden child. If she cried, I was told to hand over whatever I had. But now, standing in my kitchen looking around at the house I fought tooth and nail to buy, I felt something else rising under the anger. Resolve. 2 days later, I got proof that this wasn't just talk. I came home from the grocery store and saw a car parked out front. A man in a blazer was standing on the sidewalk taking photos of my house. I walked right up to him. Can I help you? He smiled politely. Oh, you must be Evan. I'm Tom. Your parents asked me to do a quick exterior evaluation for a potential listing. I froze. A listing? Yes. They said you were thinking of selling and wanted to move quickly. You have a beautiful property. Should get a lot of offers. I could feel my pulse in my neck. You need to leave now and don't come back unless I call you personally. He looked startled. Of course. Sorry. I must have misunderstood. No, I said quietly, watching him walk back to his car. You didn't misunderstand. They did. When he drove off, I just stood there on the porch staring at my front door. My parents had crossed a line. It wasn't just pressure anymore. They were making moves behind my back. I called my dad immediately. Why was there a realtor taking pictures of my house? I demanded. My dad didn't even sound guilty. Oh, good. He found the place. I told him to swing by when he had a minute. Without asking me? You weren't answering our calls, he said. Like that excused it. We figured you needed a little push. A little push. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. If you ever send someone to my property again, I'll call the police. Do you understand me? There was a long pause. Evan, my dad said finally, his voice low, don't do something you'll regret. Family comes first. We're just trying to help your sister. Funny, I said. It doesn't feel like you're helping anyone except her. I hung up before he could answer. That night I barely slept. I kept pacing, walking from room to room, thinking about everything I'd given up over the years. Everything I'd done to keep the peace. This house was the first thing I'd ever truly done for myself. And they were trying to take it away. By morning, the decision was made. I was done playing nice. Done being the quiet one who let everyone walk all over him. If they wanted a war over this house, they were going to get one. But on my terms. I started making phone calls. Not to the family, not yet. To a lawyer, to the bank, to a friend who worked in real estate law. I wasn't just going to protect my house. I was going to make sure they couldn't pull anything like this ever again. And as I printed out the documents later that week, reading over the words that would make it official, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. But then, just when I thought I was one step ahead, my sister did something that made my blood run cold. Something that took this entire situation from manipulative to dangerous and made me realize I had to act fast before things got worse. The thing that pushed me over the edge happened the following week. I came home from work to find my mailbox stuffed with a thick envelope. Not junk mail, but an official-looking letter from the county assessor's office. Inside was a form requesting authorization to initiate property valuation for sale. I didn't request anything. My stomach dropped. At the bottom of the form was a signature, my signature. Except it wasn't. My sister had forged my name. I stood there in my kitchen, envelope in hand, shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. She didn't even try to hide it. She'd literally taken one of the forms from when I closed on the house 2 years ago, traced the signature, and sent it in. I called her right away. "Hey," she said, sounding way too cheerful for someone who had just committed fraud. "Cut the act," I said coldly. "Did you forge my signature?" There was a pause, then an annoyed sigh. "Oh my gosh, Evan, you're being dramatic. It was just paperwork. We were trying to speed up the process before the market drops." Mom and Dad know," she said defensively. "They said it was fine. You were dragging your feet and I can't be homeless when the baby comes." I actually laughed, a hollow, stunned laugh. "You just committed a crime and your defense is the market might drop? Do you realize how insane that is?" "You're overreacting," she said, her tone snapping from fake sweet to annoyed. "You should be thanking me for helping you do what's right. This way we can all move on faster." That was the last straw. "Move on faster?" I said, my voice low. "You have no idea what's coming next. Don't call me, don't text me, and don't set foot on my property again." I hung up, shaking, not with fear this time, but with something sharper. The next morning I met with my lawyer. We drafted a cease and desist letter explicitly stating that no one was authorized to act on my behalf regarding the sale or transfer of my property. We filed it with the county and attached copies of my real signature for verification. Then I had my lawyer prepare a restraining order, not just against my sister, but also a no trespass notice that legally barred anyone in my family from contacting realtors or stepping foot on my property without my permission. It wasn't cheap. But when the sheriff's deputy served those papers at my parents' house, I got a text from my cousin 5 minutes later that said simply, "Bro, what did you do? Your mom looks like she saw a ghost." That weekend, I invited a few close friends over and celebrated by signing the last set of papers that transferred my house into a revocable living trust with me as the sole trustee. From that moment on, my house wasn't technically owned by me, but by the trust. That meant if anyone tried to sue me, pressure me, or force a sale, they'd be fighting a legal entity with its own protections. But I wasn't done. A month later, my sister sent out invitations for her baby shower. I wasn't invited. My mom texted me the next day. "We thought it would be better if you didn't come just to keep the peace." That text was the final green light for me to go through with the plan I'd been quietly setting up since the night of my birthday dinner. See, during those late nights after work, while my family thought I was stewing in my house, I'd been meeting with a financial advisor. I had more savings than they thought. Not millions, but enough. Enough to make a point. 2 weeks before the shower, I had a professional event planner rent out the nicest hall in town on the same date and time as my sister's shower. Then I mailed out invitations to the entire extended family, plus a few of her friends, cousins, and even some of her coworkers, inviting them to Evan's housewarming and mortgage-free celebration. When the day came, my sister apparently still went ahead with her shower. According to my cousin, who texted me updates the entire time, barely half the guests showed up. The rest came to my event. At mine, I gave a short speech. Calm, collected. "Thanks for coming," I said, standing in front of a big display showing my framed deed and a photo of my house. "As most of you know, there was a little drama about my home recently. Tonight, I just wanted to make something clear. This house isn't going anywhere. It's fully paid off, legally protected, and can't be touched by anyone but me. And I want you all to know that I will never again be pressured, guilt-tripped, or manipulated into giving up the life I built for myself." The room erupted in applause, and it wasn't just pity claps. Several relatives came up to me after, quietly, saying they admired me for standing my ground, that they wish they'd done the same in their own families. Meanwhile, my sister texted me mid-party. "You were so selfish. Half my guests left early. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" I didn't reply. A few weeks later, word got around that she and Matt had to move in with his parents temporarily because they couldn't make rent. I didn't gloat, didn't say "I told you so," but I also didn't offer a dime. The last time I saw them months later at Thanksgiving, she wouldn't look me in the eye. My mom tried to act like everything was normal, but I noticed she didn't bring up my house, money, or my responsibilities once. Funny how quickly people stop talking about what you owe them once you make it clear you won't be pushed around anymore. As we were leaving that night, my dad walked me to the door. For the first time in my life, he looked respectful. "You really made your point this time," he said quietly. "Yeah," I said, slipping on my coat. "And I'll make it again if I have to." I drove home, pulled into my driveway, and just sat there for a moment staring at the house. My house. For the first time in months, it didn't feel like a battleground. Felt like mine again. And the best part, I didn't just win the fight. I made sure there wouldn't be another one. So, that's how I shut down my family's little plan and made sure my house stayed mine forever. Honestly, I still can't believe they thought I'd just roll over and sell it because they asked. What do you think? Was I too harsh by legally shutting them out? Or was this the only way to finally make them respect my boundaries? Now on to the next story. Story 6. My name's Marcus. I'm 34. And if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you that my younger brother, Josh, and I were close. Like stupidly close. I helped him through college, let him crash on my couch more times than I can count. Backed his business idea with $20,000. A loan that magically turned into a gift. And last year, when he and his girlfriend, Emily, found the perfect little condo but couldn't afford first and last month's rent, I stepped in without hesitation. That was always how I operated. Quietly, helpfully, no strings. I didn't need recognition. I just wanted my brother to have the shot at the life he was always chasing. But somewhere along the line, Josh mistook generosity for weakness. He stopped saying thank you, stopped calling just to talk. And slowly, things shifted. I was no longer the supportive older brother. I was the wallet, the fixer, the backup plan. And I didn't even realize it until it was too late. The final straw came the night of his engagement dinner. Josh and Emily were hosting it at this overpriced restaurant downtown. Some rooftop place with string lights and a wine list longer than my apartment lease. It was fancy, sure, but I was genuinely happy for them. Despite everything, I'd planned a surprise. I was going to cover 6 months of their rent on the new condo they were moving into next week. I'd written out the check, sealed it in a crisp white envelope, and even added a little note. Just a simple, proud of you, little bro. I pictured him getting emotional, maybe hugging me, telling Emily's family how I'd always been there for him. But that's not how it went. I arrived 15 minutes early, per usual. The host gave me a weird look when I said Josh's name, like he didn't expect me to be on the list. After confirming, he finally led me up to the rooftop where a dozen people were already mingling around champagne flutes and tiny crab cakes. I spotted Josh at the far end, laughing with Emily's dad, wearing that smug, too smooth expression he always used when he was trying to impress someone. He barely looked at me when I approached, just a quick chin nod, then a dismissive, "Hey, you made it," like I was the distant cousin, not the guy who paid a security deposit. Still, I brushed it off. Dinner started fine. Salads, polite small talk, awkward laughter between our family and Emily's. Josh was holding court like he always did, telling the same tired story about how he sold sneakers in high school to learn business. I let him have his moment. That was the plan. Be supportive. Let him shine. And then, at the right moment after dessert, maybe I'd hand him the envelope and watch his face light up. That moment never came. Instead, about midway through the dinner, Josh raised his glass and tapped it for attention. "Thanks for coming, everyone. It means a lot to have all of you here. Especially Emily's family, who's basically taken me in like one of their own." I tilted my head slightly. No mention of our parents who drove 6 hours to be there. No mention of me. "And of course," he continued, "a huge shout out to my beautiful fiancée who said yes, even though I'm a total mess most days. I promise I'll try to be worth it." Everyone clapped. Emily blushed. Her mom wiped a tear. It was sweet, genuine, even. But still, not one word to me. Not even when the waiter brought out a small cake with "Congrats, Josh," and Emily piped in gold icing. I thought maybe he was saving it. Maybe there'd be a toast later, a private word. Something. I waited. I sipped my drink. I forced myself to laugh at the jokes. Finally, as the plates were being cleared, I saw my window. I stood up quietly, slid the envelope from my coat pocket, and cleared my throat. Hey, before the night's over, I just wanted to say congrats again. Josh raised an eyebrow. You already said that, didn't you? There was a hint of sarcasm in his voice and Emily's brother snorted. I ignored it. I had something for you guys. I set the envelope in front of them. Just a little help on the condo. 6 months rent fully covered. The table went silent. Emily looked shocked. Her parents exchanged glances. Josh. He stared at the envelope then laughed. Not a small laugh like full-on amusement. Dude, seriously? I blinked. What? He picked up the envelope and waved it mockingly. I mean, this is great and all, but if you really wanted to make a difference, maybe throw in a year. Who knows? Maybe then you'd actually make the guest list. The entire table chuckled. A few nervously. One of Emily's cousins went, oof. My heart dropped. I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because in that moment, everything crystallized. Every favor, every dollar. Every time I bailed him out and got nothing but silence in return, it all snapped into place. I wasn't family to him. I was leverage, an ATM, an accessory. So, I smiled, reached across the table, and calmly took back the envelope. Josh raised an eyebrow. What are you doing? I leaned in slightly, placed a single sheet of paper in its place and said, actually, you have 30 days to move out. He froze. What? I turned the page toward him so he could read the header. Notice of lease termination. Then I glanced at Emily's stunned parents and added, I own the building. The silence at the table was deafening. Emily's face went pale. Her dad sat down his wine, his mouth slightly open. Josh stared at the paper like it was in another language. You're evicting us? He said quietly. I shrugged. No hard feelings. It's just business. But hey, maybe Emily's family can take you in again, like one of their own. And with that, I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and turned to leave just as Josh's voice cracked behind me. Wait, Marcus, come on. You're not serious. I didn't look back as I walked toward the elevator. Didn't need to. I could hear the muffled voices behind me, the shocked murmurs, and the sharp whisper of Emily's mom hissing something like, You didn't tell us he owned the place? The elevator dinged open, and I stepped in with the same quiet, deliberate calm I'd always used when fixing Josh's messes. Only this time I wasn't cleaning anything up. I was letting it collapse. The drive home was silent, just the low hum of the city rushing past my windows. I didn't even turn on the radio. My phone buzzed twice before I hit the freeway, both from Josh. The first was a missed call. The second was a text. Dude, WTF, call me. I didn't. Instead, I pulled into my apartment garage, went upstairs and sat in the dark for a while. No TV, no music, just silence. I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of how long I'd let this version of our relationship drag on. How many small moments I brushed off. How many times I told myself he'd grow out of it, that he was just immature, stressed, figuring things out. It's funny, people think betrayal is always loud. A big blow-up, screaming, dramatic exits. But for me, it was a quiet erosion, a slow chipping away of respect. And the worst part was I let it happen. Josh didn't try again that night. But by morning, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. 3 missed calls from him. 2 from Emily, 1 from my mom. I ignored all of them. By noon, I'd forwarded the official notice to their email. CCG, the property manager. No loopholes, no extensions. 30 days. I'd made sure of it. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail from my mother. I listened. Marcus, honey, what is going on? Josh called us this morning, absolutely devastated. You didn't tell him you own the building. He says you blindsided him. Please call me back. This feels extreme. I rolled my eyes. Of course, devastated, not apologetic, not grateful, just blindsided. Like I had snuck up behind him and pushed him off a cliff he'd been dancing on for years. I didn't respond. The next 2 days were more the same. Josh tried alternating between pleading and raging. One message would say, You made your point, man. Can we just talk? And the next would read, You're such a bitter little loser. This is why Dad never respected you. That one made me laugh. Then came Emily. She wasn't hostile, just confused. I know he can be dumb, but he didn't mean it. He was just trying to make a joke in front of his family. He really does appreciate you, Marcus. We both do. I stared at that message for a while. I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered how she smirked when Josh made the "maybe you'll make the guest list" comment. How she didn't say anything. How she only reached out after the rent was gone. Nope. That Sunday, I went to the building not to confront them, just to make sure things were in order. The unit was quiet, blinds drawn, no signs of packing. I knocked once, just out of courtesy. No answer. As I turned to leave, the door opened behind me. Josh stood there in sweatpants, eyes bloodshot, hair a mess. "Seriously," he muttered. "You're going to throw us out over a joke?" I looked at him, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel anything. No guilt, no second-guessing, just a weird, peaceful detachment. "It wasn't a joke," I said calmly. "It was a mirror." He frowned. "What does that even mean?" "It means that what you said at dinner, that wasn't some offhand comment. That was the truth you say when you think you don't need me anymore. And you were right about one thing. I don't belong on your guest list because I'm not your brother anymore. I'm just the guy you use when things get hard." Josh shook his head. "You're overreacting." I smiled. "And you're underreacting to the fact that you just burned the last bridge that ever carried you." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Instead, he just leaned against the door frame, defeated. "I'll have my stuff out in 2 weeks," he mumbled. "You've got 4, I reminded him. "Use them wisely." And I left. But that wasn't the end. A week later, I got a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Uncle Ray, my dad's younger brother. The one relative who never picked sides when our family started splintering after Dad passed. He wasn't close to Josh or me, but he always watched from the sidelines. His message just said, "Saw what happened. Got something you might want to know. Call me when you can." That was the moment I realized this might be bigger than just rent and disrespect. This might go deeper. I stared at Uncle Ray's message for a full minute before calling. Ray wasn't the type to reach out unless it really mattered. The last time we spoke was at Dad's funeral 5 years ago, and even then it was more nods and handshakes than conversation. But something about his timing and the way he phrased it sent a chill down my spine. He picked up on the second ring. "Marcus," he said like he'd been expecting my call all day. "Hey, Uncle Ray, I got your message." "Good. Listen, what happened with Josh? I don't want to get in the middle of your business, but I've been holding on to something for a while now. I didn't think it was my place, but after hearing what he pulled at that dinner," I leaned forward, elbows on my desk. "What is it?" Ray let out a long breath. "It's about your dad's trust. The one he set up before he passed." My stomach tightened. "What about it?" I asked. Ray paused. "You always believed it was split evenly, right? That you and Josh each got half." I blinked. "That's what the lawyer told us." Josh was 24 at the time. I was 29. It made sense. Ray sighed. "That's not exactly what your dad wanted. I was there when he drafted the first version. The original plan was to leave everything to you. All of it," he said, and I quote, "Josh needs to learn how to build. Marcus already does. But after your mom intervened, they amended it to an even split." That didn't surprise me. Mom always coddled Josh. But I still didn't understand the point of this conversation. "Okay," I said slowly. "But we did split it evenly. I used mine to start my business. Josh blew his on an app idea and that ridiculous motorcycle. End of story." Ray chuckled grimly. "Not quite. 2 months after your dad's funeral, Josh came to me. Said he needed help moving some money around. He claimed you'd already taken your half and he just wanted to pull his out quietly without lawyers being nosy. I didn't touch it, but I did tell him something." "What?" I asked. "I told him there was a third account." I froze. "What?" Ray's voice was calm. "Your dad was a cautious man. He didn't trust Josh's judgment even with the split. So he set aside a separate investment account, stocks, bonds, a few long-term holdings. He called it Marcus's anchor. Said you were the kind of man who'd never ask for help, so he'd leave help where you wouldn't think to look. Told me about it over drinks one night. Said not even your mom knew. I stood up slowly from my desk, heart pounding. So what are you saying? There's money in my name that I don't even know about. Ray hesitated. I'm saying Josh found it. My blood ran cold. He drained it, didn't he? I whispered. Ray didn't answer at first. Then he said, I don't have hard proof, but I know he started driving a new car not long after. Got real quiet when I asked about his finances. Your dad's old broker retired, but I can put you in touch with the firm that absorbed his files. They'll know. I leaned on the desk, breath shallow. And you didn't say anything before now? I thought it was family business, he said. I told myself it wasn't my place. But hearing about what he said to you at that dinner, I realized I've been protecting someone who stopped deserving it a long time ago. I didn't even thank him. I just said, send me the contact. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I was on the phone with the financial firm Ray mentioned. After a few rounds of security checks, I finally got a woman named Barbara on the line. Mid-50s, polite, careful. Yes, Mr. Wyatt, she said. Your name is listed on an account originally established by Gregory Wyatt in 2008. However, it was closed in 2021. My throat tightened. Closed? By who? There was a pause on her end. I'm afraid I can't give you that information directly over the phone, but I can send the closure documents to the address we have on file. That would be... She read out Josh's condo address. I nearly crushed the phone in my hand. Thank you, I said through gritted teeth. Actually, update the mailing address to my primary residence. I'll verify it now. By the time the documents arrived 2 days later, I'd already started pulling every thread I could find. Phone logs, emails, my father's old notebooks. I even went back to the lawyer who handled the estate, requesting a full breakdown of every asset ever dispersed. Most of it checked out, but the timeline of the anchor account, something was off. The documents confirmed it. Josh had posed as me. He'd forged the signature, used an ID he must have faked or borrowed, and quietly siphoned the funds over the course of 2 months. Nearly $190,000. Gone. I stared at the number for what felt like hours. Not because I needed the money. I was doing fine. It was the principle, the weight of it. My father had trusted me, believed in me enough to build a quiet parachute I never asked for. And Josh had cut it loose mid-flight. My phone buzzed again that evening. This time it was Emily. Please don't do this to him. He's not perfect, but he's trying. This eviction is destroying him. I typed back, he destroyed something first. No response. For a few days I waited. Then I made my next move. I didn't yell. I didn't call. I didn't even warn him. But by the end of the week, he'd wake up to a very different kind of letter. One that starts with, Dear Mr. Wyatt, and ends with formal charges of financial fraud. I didn't sleep the night before the letter hit Josh's mailbox. Not because I was nervous. No, I had already crossed that line. I'd wrestled with guilt, with second-guessing, with the heavy ache of betrayal. But by now, those feelings had hardened into something else, something sharper. This wasn't vengeance for the sake of vengeance. This was justice. My father trusted me with that anchor fund. Josh buried it in his pocket like a piece of stolen silver, and I wasn't going to let that stand. So, when the certified letter was delivered courtesy of a fraud investigator I hired privately before anything went to court, I sat back and waited. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't check social media. I just waited. Took 20 hours. At 11:02 the next morning, Josh showed up at my office. I could see him from the security camera feed at the front desk, hair wild, hoodie pulled up, a mess of nerves barely disguised by forced bravado. My assistant buzzed me. There's a man named Josh Wyatt downstairs. Says he's your brother. Tell him I'm in a meeting, I said without hesitation. Should I give him a copy of the document in the red folder marked Fraud Disclosure? I had prepared it days earlier. I had a feeling he'd come in person. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Then I got a text. Josh, you're actually going to ruin my life over this. We're family. Then another. Josh, come on, man. You don't need the money. Followed by Josh. Fine. If this is how you want to play it, I'll burn with you. I muted his number. Later that evening, I got a call from Emily. I didn't pick up, but she left a voicemail. Marcus, look, I didn't know about the money. I swear. I thought you'd given it to him. He told me his dad left him something directly and that you didn't need it. I didn't question it. I should have, but I didn't. And now everything's falling apart. He's losing it, Marcus. He can't sleep. He hasn't been to work. He thinks you're going to send him to jail. Are you? Yes, but I didn't say that. I didn't respond. Instead, I let the investigator do his job, and he did it well. By the end of the week, Josh was served with an official complaint detailing the full extent of the financial fraud. Forging my identity, misrepresenting himself to a financial institution, and illegally transferring funds from a trust account. The total damage, $188,294.37, not including interest. The investigator even managed to trace the transactions. 2 luxury vacations, a lease on a Tesla, the failed startup he'd been pretending to bootstrap. He hadn't just used the money, he wasted it. The legal process wasn't fast. It took months to get the court date. During that time, I didn't speak to Josh. Not once. Our mother tried calling me, of course. First a guilt trip, then a plea. You can't be serious, she said in one voicemail. He's your brother. He's your blood. And in another, you know how hard life's been on him, Marcus. You always had it easier. Let it go. Easier. That was rich. I paid my way through college while Josh got help at every step. I stayed behind to take care of Dad when his cancer got bad. I ran the errands. I made the appointments. And when Dad passed, I handled the funeral while Josh flew in late and left early. But sure, easier. My favorite call, though, came 2 weeks before the court date, from Josh. He didn't yell this time. He didn't threaten. He just pleaded. Marcus, he said, please don't do this. I messed up. I know I did. But I'm not a criminal. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. I thought you wouldn't care. You've got your life together. You always have. I was drowning and you had a life raft you didn't even know about. I panicked. He paused. I'm sorry. It was the first time he'd said it, and it should have meant something, but it was too late. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse wearing a charcoal suit and steady nerves. Josh looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Emily sat behind him, her face pale, eyes rimmed red. The judge asked a few questions. Josh's lawyer tried to paint it as a family misunderstanding. I handed over the forged signature samples, the withdrawal logs, and the certified testimony from the financial advisor. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was methodical theft. Josh was given a choice. Repay the funds in full with interest over a court-supervised repayment plan spanning the next 7 years or face a felony charge and likely jail time. He chose the repayment plan barely. Afterward, outside the courtroom, he approached me. He looked hollow, ashamed. A piece of him finally understood the weight of what he'd done. I meant what I said, he told me. About being sorry. I nodded. That's good. You should be. You really want me to pay all of it back? Yes. I'll lose everything. Then maybe next time, I said quietly. You won't treat people like they're disposable. He opened his mouth again, but no words came out. He just stood there, shoulders slumped, watching me walk away. I never heard from him again. As for the money, I didn't even need it. Once the first repayment check cleared, I redirected the funds to a scholarship program in our dad's name. One specifically aimed at kids with entrepreneurial dreams and no family support. Every dollar Josh returned went to someone who wouldn't squander it. That felt right. And the condo, I sold it. Not out of spite, just closure. Emily moved out shortly after the hearing. Last I heard, she left Josh for good. Can't say I blame her. My mom still sends holiday cards. I don't reply. She made her choices, too. Uncle Ray and I talk more now. We even grab coffee once a month. Turns out he had more stories about Dad than I ever knew. As for me, I'm good. Really good. Not because I won, but because I stopped letting people take pieces of me without permission. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for family is stop letting them treat you like you owe them forever. Now on to the next story. Story 7. They took a trip to Costa Rica. I found out from my sister's Facebook. Tropical reset with real family. I didn't respond until she sent a message meant for her husband. She still hasn't noticed the villa went on her card. I replied, "Time's up." Then I froze the transaction and contacted the rental host directly. At 7:44 a.m., I got a notification, property access revoked. 20 minutes later, Maya texted, "We're locked out with all our stuff inside." I didn't find out they went to Costa Rica until my sister posted a picture from a beachside hammock with a coconut in her hand. The caption read, "Tropical reset with real family." That line stayed with me longer than it should have. I scrolled past it even though my brain latched on to those last two words like a burr. They left the night before the baby shower. My wife was 7 months pregnant. We planned this party for weeks. Handmade decorations, rented a space, everything ready to go. Mom had promised to bring the cake. My aunt was supposed to handle the drinks. My sister swore she'd help set up. No one showed. They didn't cancel, didn't call, just left the country. At first, I assumed something came up. A last-minute emergency. Maybe someone got sick. I didn't expect them to be sipping cocktails under palm trees while we were cleaning up confetti alone in an empty hall. I didn't message anyone. I didn't like confrontation. I told myself I'd deal with it later. But then, 3 days after the party, I got a message from my sister. No hey or sorry. Just a single sentence. She still hasn't noticed the villa went on her card. That's when everything snapped into place. I opened my banking app, stomach twisting. Sure enough, the charge was there. Pleo Villas, $4,682.74. I had to sit down. They used my card. The one I lent Mom months ago when she claimed her bank app was acting up. I let her use it to order a space heater or something, told her to delete it after. She never did. And now they'd used it to pay for a luxury villa in Costa Rica without asking, without even telling me. I sat there staring at that message. I didn't even think. I typed back, "Time's up." Then I froze the card and emailed the rental host directly. I explained the situation, attached screenshots, flagged it as fraud. I wasn't sure what they'd do. Honestly, I didn't expect much, but the host replied within the hour. At 7:44 a.m. the next day, I got an update. Access to the property has been revoked. No emotion, no drama, just cold efficiency. 20 minutes later, a message popped up in our family group chat from my aunt. "We are locked in with all our belongings inside." Then, "Can someone explain what's going on?" Then, "This isn't funny, Mason." I turned off notifications. My wife was still sleeping. When she came downstairs, I handed her my phone. She scrolled through the messages slowly, then looked at me. Neither of us said anything for a second. She put the phone down and poured herself coffee. They'd flown to another country the night before the baby shower. They used my card to do it. They posted about it online. And then they laughed behind our backs, thinking we wouldn't notice. My wife sipped her coffee. So, what's next? I had no idea yet, but something told me this wasn't over. Not even close. By noon, I'd counted 38 missed calls and at least 60 unread messages across text, WhatsApp, and the family group chat. First came the confused ones. "What's going on, Mason? The villa won't open. Can you call the host for us?" Then came the shift, fast and sharp. "You've lost your mind. Grow up. This isn't funny. You're ruining everything." I didn't answer any of them. I was sitting in the kitchen, the same place I sat when I saw that smug coconut photo, watching the chaos grow from silence. The villa was locked. The key cards deactivated. They were stuck outside in sandals and beach clothes while all the luggage sat just inside the glass doors, visible but untouchable. The best part? It was pouring. Rain soaked the sidewalk in front of the property. I knew because my cousin, for some reason, sent a picture to the family chat, maybe thinking it would guilt me. Didn't. I called the rental company again just to make sure everything was solid. The woman I spoke to this time had a kind voice but didn't sound surprised when I explained. Sounded like she dealt with families like mine before. I asked about the luggage and she said they'd allow a one-time supervised pickup, but only by the original cardholder. So they were stuck. Realistically, they could get the luggage if they cooperated. But I knew they wouldn't. Not without first trying every manipulative trick in the book. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a long message from my mom. I didn't read it immediately. I made a sandwich, washed the dishes, fed the dog. Then I sat down and scrolled through it. She said they were humiliated, that they were scared in a foreign country, and that I was being unrecognizable lately. She asked me if I'd really changed so much that I'd do this to my own mother. She ended it with, "You'll regret this when the baby arrives and you realize how important family really is." I sent back 2 words. "You first." Then came my sister. "You're letting her control you," she wrote, meaning my wife. "This isn't you. She's turning you against us." But it was me. It had always been me. I just never enforced a boundary before. I scrolled back through some older texts for a reminder. The ones where they asked for $200 until payday, then $500 for a car emergency, then $1,800 because they were behind on rent. I'd always sent the money quietly without conditions because I was raised to feel guilty if I didn't. That night, my wife walked into the living room holding my wallet. "What's the plan?" I looked at her and didn't say anything. I think I was still processing just how far my family had gone. She pulled out every credit and debit card I'd ever let them use. The one I lent my mom, the one I co-signed for my dad's balance transfer, even the emergency card I'd given my sister, just in case. She handed me my personal card, then held up the rest. "These are theirs, not yours." And before I could say anything, she snapped each one in half, one by one, then tossed the pieces into a paper bag and threw it in the outside trash. I stood by the door for a long time, just listening to the quiet. No buzzing phone, no pinging group chat, just silence. I sent one last message before bed, just one sentence. "Hope the real family helps you figure it out." And then I blocked them all. Every single one. They landed 5 days early. I saw it before they even told me. My cousin had posted a photo of a greasy airport burger and fries with the caption, "Never flying Spirit again, don't ask," which was funny because they flew Delta on the way out. My guess, they couldn't afford return flights on the same airline and had to scrounge for anything cheap. I didn't reach out, but I knew it wouldn't be long before they reached me. 2 days later, it happened. I was in the nursery half listening to a podcast while assembling the crib when the doorbell rang. I peeked out the front window and saw my mom, sister, and dad on the porch. My aunt and cousin were standing by the car, arms crossed like they were about to watch a street performance. I didn't say anything at first. My wife looked up from the floor where she was sorting onesies into bins and raised an eyebrow. I opened the door slowly. Mom didn't wait for an invitation. She walked in like it was still her house. My sister followed, shoes on, dripping entitlement. My dad hesitated, offered a weak nod, then stepped inside behind them. They didn't sit, just stood in the living room, looking at me like I owed them something. "We need to talk," my mom said like I hadn't heard that phrase 100 times before, usually before a request for money. I stayed quiet. This was way over the line. My sister added, "You locked us out in a different country. Do you know how dangerous that was?" Real mature, Mason. My mom said, "Canceling the villa like that. You could have called. You could have said something." I didn't answer. She tried a different tactic. "We get it. Okay. You're angry, but you don't throw your family under the bus." That was rich coming from her. "You stole from me," I said. "Finally. We borrowed," she snapped back. "Don't act like you're poor." That was the problem. They thought because I had a house, a stable job, and didn't complain, I was their personal ATM. Every emergency, every overdue bill, every oops, we forgot rent again moment, they came to me. And I always paid quietly without keeping score until now. My wife stood up from the nursery doorway. She walked into the room and dropped a piece of paper on the coffee table, neatly printed, highlighted rows. Total at the bottom, $5,412. Every single dollar they owed me from the last 4 years. She didn't say a word. "What is this?" my mom asked. "A bill." My wife replied, and my sister scoffed. "This is insane. You're letting her do this to us." I didn't respond. My mom turned back to me. "You really want to talk about money now after everything we've done for you?" "You mean after everything I've done for you?" I said. "You're about to have a child," she said. "Do you really want to cut off your entire family right before that?" "I'm not cutting anyone off," I said. "You did that yourselves." My wife picked up my phone and handed it to me. "If they're not gone in the next 2 minutes, I'm calling the cops." That's when the yelling started. Not from me. I didn't raise my voice once. But my mom, my sister, they lost it. Accusations, guilt-tripping, even a threat to challenge me in court for emotional distress. That one actually made me laugh. Eventually, they stormed out. No apologies, no acknowledgement, just slammed doors and muttering on the way down the steps. My dad stayed behind a second longer. "I didn't know they used your card," he said quietly. "I didn't know until we got there." Then he left too. That night, after we had dinner and the house was calm again, I sat down with my laptop and filled out the small claims paperwork. $5,000 clean. I wasn't desperate for the money, but it was about the principle. The next morning, I got a text from my aunt. "You're taking this too far." I replied with the case number. They haven't spoken to me since. They didn't show up to court. Not a call, not a postponement, not even an excuse, just didn't show. I sat on the wooden bench in that tiny courtroom, waited as the clerk called the case number, and watched the judge glance at the file, raise an eyebrow, and sign off on the default judgment like it was a parking ticket. $5,000 plus court fees. Took 3 minutes. As I walked out, I held the ruling in one hand, but it felt like I was holding more than that. I wasn't excited. I wasn't smug. I just felt still for the first time in years, like my life had finally unclenched. When I got home, my wife was waiting with a black frame she picked up from Target. I laughed when she pulled it out, but she was serious. "Frame it," she said. "You finally chose us." So I did. I hung the court ruling outside my office. Not because I needed a trophy, but because it marked the end of something I'd been too afraid to cut off for most of my life. It was the first time I'd ever set a boundary and watched it hold. No one in the family mentioned the lawsuit, not even to complain. They just went dark like the whole thing never happened. But the posts kept coming. My sister put up a selfie with her iced coffee and one of those cryptic captions. "Some people teach you who not to be." My aunt shared a blurry picture of herself in front of a church, writing, "God heals, but lessons are earned." Then my cousin posted a full carousel from the Costa Rica trip, weeks late, like the whole debacle had been a dream vacation. It was all so performative I stopped looking. Then came my dad's birthday. In our family, birthdays used to be a whole event. Grilled ribs, plastic tablecloths, my uncle bringing over too much beer, my mom bringing out cake like it was a prize. My dad's was always the biggest. They planned it for a Saturday, which we usually never missed. But this time, I didn't even pretend to care. My wife and I booked a weekend away instead. Just 2 hours upstate near a lake where the only sounds were birds and the occasional boat motor. We sat on the porch of a little rental cabin and ate takeout Thai food on paper plates. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "This is what peace feels like." I posted one photo, just the view from the porch. A pine tree against the lake, soft fog rolling in. The caption was short, "We're good." No family tags, no baby bump shots, no explanations. But I knew they saw it because 2 hours later, my cousin posted a group photo from my parents' backyard. Everyone squinting in the sun, clutching red Solo cups. My sister front and center doing a peace sign with her tongue out like it was 2010. My dad stood behind her, smiling weakly. My mom wasn't in the frame. There was no mention of me, not even a fake "wish you were here." The next morning, my neighbor flagged me down while I was bringing in the recycling. "Your folks were around here," she said. "Drove past twice over the weekend. I think they were looking at your house." I nodded. Didn't ask for details. The drive-bys didn't stop. Once in the morning, once at night, always slow. No one came to the door. They didn't text. They didn't call. Just circled the house like sharks, pretending they weren't hunting. Then a week later I got a letter, typed, folded perfectly. No return address. No signature. Families fight. But what you're doing isn't normal. This is punishment, not love. We forgave you when you were difficult. Now it's your turn. It's time to come home. Home? I didn't even finish reading it. I tore it once down the middle, then again sideways, dropped it in the trash next to the empty coffee pods. They wanted me to feel guilt. But guilt doesn't grow in distance. It dies there. What replaced it wasn't revenge or hate. It was calm. And once you taste calm, chaos just looks like desperation. By mid-October, the money still hadn't come in. The court had ruled in my favor. But I knew how this worked. Getting the judgment was one thing. Collecting was another. My dad had nothing in his name. My mom had a credit score you could sweep up with a dustpan. If they thought ignoring the debt would make it vanish, they were wrong. So I filed to garnish my mom's wages. It was easy. She worked part-time at a dental office. Took me 20 minutes and 2 pieces of mail. Within a few weeks, the deductions began. A slow drip of repayment. $217.45 from her first check. That's when the real fury started. She didn't call me. Didn't send a text. She went straight to Facebook. Unbelievable what some people will do to their own mother. Some wounds never heal. #brokenheart. There were 100 comments in 2 hours. Friends I hadn't heard from in years chimed in with, "So sorry. Stay strong. And family is everything. Keep praying." She loved the attention. Replied to every comment like she was the victim of a mugging, not a court-ordered garnishment. I didn't respond publicly, but I made sure to send a certified letter to her apartment confirming the garnishment schedule and the remaining balance. $4,782.55. That same week, my sister showed up at my work. I saw her through the glass doors before she even stepped inside. She was dressed like she was going to brunch, sunglasses on, like this was some kind of casual intervention. "You need to stop," she said. I told her I was at work and she needed to leave. She didn't. "You're taking money from our mother. What is wrong with you?" I reminded her that our mother took money from me illegally, repeatedly without permission. She said I should have just talked to them, that I didn't need to ruin her life, that mom had taken out a payday loan to cover the rent because of the garnishment. I just said, then maybe she shouldn't have spent $5,000 on a beach house. Security walked her out after she started shouting. My boss didn't even ask for an explanation. He just nodded at me like, "Families, huh?" When I got home, my wife was already waiting with her laptop open. "Let's finish it," she said. She'd been tracking the debts they owed beyond the card. Random payments I'd forgotten. The electric bill I paid 3 winters ago. The short-term loan I gave my cousin. It totaled another $1,200. I wasn't sure I wanted to go that far, but she looked at me and said, "They would have drained you dry if you didn't stop. Let them feel what they built." So I did. I filed a lien against my dad's car. It wasn't worth much, but it was enough to make them realize I wasn't bluffing. And that's when the messages stopped completely. Not blocked, not muted, just gone, like they'd finally gotten the message. We spent Thanksgiving with friends that year. No drama, no politics at the table. Just food, laughter, and people who didn't see kindness as currency. And for the first time in years, I slept through the whole night. Christmas came and went without a single word from them. No card, no call, no Merry Christmas text. Not even a guilt trip in disguise. It felt strange at first. Not sad. Not even disappointing, just unfamiliar. Like I'd moved into a quieter house in my own life, and the echo was still adjusting. Our daughter was born the week before New Year's Eve. Tiny, loud, perfect. I held her in the hospital room and thought, she'll never know what it feels like to be used by her own family. That was enough. The hospital stay was short. My wife recovered well, and we brought our daughter home on a snowy morning. It was the first time I'd ever looked at that house, ours, and felt like it had a new purpose. Not just a place to escape from them, but something we were building forward. When the birth announcement went up on my wife's page, the reaction was exactly what I expected. Dozens of friends commented. Kind words, emojis, gifts arrived, diapers, soft toys, handwritten notes from people who actually meant them. From my family, silence. Well, not complete silence. 2 days later, my aunt posted a photo of a candle and a Bible verse. No caption, but the comments told the story. My cousin wrote, "She didn't even tell us." Someone else said, "So sad when families break like this." Another, "You'll be blessed for your patience." It was always the same performance. Pain as performance, grief with an audience. My wife saw the post and asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. In February, my mom's wage garnishment hit its third cycle. I checked the account that held the repayment deposit. Just under $700 had come in so far. It was slow and it wouldn't all come back. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about reality tapping them on the shoulder every 2 weeks, reminding them that things had changed. They stopped trying to contact me completely. No letters, no drive-bys, no sudden appearances. I don't know if it was resignation or just embarrassment, but they'd retreated. We booked a trip to Arizona in April. First plane ride with a baby. It was chaos in the best way. Formula leaks, lost pacifiers, crying mid-takeoff, but every second was ours. I posted a picture from Sedona, just our daughter's tiny feet against the backdrop of red rock and sky. A few hours later, my cousin posted a photo of her own. Same pose, just her feet, hiking boots in front of a local trail. The caption was, "Some of us hike for peace. Some of us run from guilt." I actually laughed out loud. They still watched, still obsessed, still bitter, but none of it reached me. We came back home to a house that didn't feel haunted anymore. No ghosts of obligation, no footsteps outside the door, just the three of us and quiet and sunlight in the living room where it used to be all shadows. They had each other. All the ones who stayed behind in their drama-filled circle, feeding off each other's wounds like currency. And I had something else entirely. Peace. A new family. A future that didn't include them. And honestly, that's been the happiest ending I could have asked for. Spring slid into early summer without a ripple. My wife went back to work part-time. The baby settled into a nap schedule like some miracle child, and I started feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Steady. No fires to put out, no fake emergencies, no guilt-laced phone calls. So when the envelope arrived, I thought it was junk mail. No return address, no logo, just my name, handwritten, a little crooked. I opened it while standing over the recycling bin. Inside was a check, a real one from a local law firm. The amount, $5,000. First, I thought it was a scam. One of those fake overpayment tricks where they hope you'll deposit it and send money back. But it was too accurate. My name was spelled right. The address was exact. The amount was to the cent, the number from the court judgment. There was a post-it stuck to the check. Just 4 words written in rushed, tired handwriting. "We're square. Stay gone." I read it again and again. I didn't need to guess who sent it. The law firm was legit. The account it came from belonged to a friend of my uncle's. Someone I knew they'd leaned on before, probably desperate to make this all go away. The same people who refused to show up in court, who mocked me online, who spun a whole narrative about being betrayed by blood, had just written a check to erase it. My wife didn't believe it at first. "They finally gave up," she said. Why? That was the part one couldn't figure out. Maybe they were tired. Maybe the garnishments embarrassed them. Maybe someone finally convinced them I wasn't bluffing. Or maybe, just maybe, they were scared I'd go further because I could have, and they knew it. The post-it told me everything I needed to know. They didn't want peace. They wanted silence. They wanted to make sure I never came back with another lawsuit or claim. Not because they felt sorry, but because I was unpredictable now. I'd stopped playing the part. I deposited the check. The next week, I took a portion of it and booked a fall trip for me, my wife, and the baby, somewhere quiet, somewhere green, a cabin with no cell signal and trails out the back door. And before I threw the post-it away, I wrote one more thing on it. Silence isn't surrender. Then I tucked it in the drawer next to the framed court ruling. Because whatever story they told themselves, they'd forget one thing. I didn't leave the family. I just stopped being their foundation. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Mom picked this obnoxiously expensive steakhouse for her birthday. Not because she particularly liked the food, but because it had valet parking and dim lighting that made her feel like a celebrity. She invited a mix of people, mostly the ones who praise her enough to make the evening worth her time. I wasn't really invited so much as expected. Same with the bill. I paid like always quietly. No thanks. No offers to split. Just this unspoken rule that Jack handles it. I came a little late, not on purpose, but I didn't rush either. When I walked in, they were already halfway through their appetizers. Becca glanced at her phone like I'd interrupted her. Dad didn't even look up. Mom gave me this lazy little wave like I was the waiter. I sat down at the end of the table. There were about 12 people in total. Some cousins, a few aunts, and 2 women I didn't recognize who were probably just there to fill seats and compliment Mom's new haircut. Dinner dragged. I mostly kept quiet and let them talk at each other. Becca talked about her wine review side hustle like it was the next Netflix. She hadn't made a dime from it, but acted like I should be proud. Dad kept making backhanded comments about how some of us work for a living. Whenever I mentioned anything remotely successful, Mom just smiled at everyone like she was holding court. Then came the toast. Dad stood up and clinked his glass. The room hushed. He smiled at Mom. At first, I thought it'd be the usual. To my beautiful wife. Some inside joke from their college days. Something syrupy and boring. But then he said it. To a new beginning. Starting today, we are no longer a family. For a second, I honestly thought it was some weird joke, like he'd follow it with something lame about growing or evolving or whatever. He didn't. People actually started clapping. Not loudly, but just enough to make it real. Mayan even said, finally, under her breath. I looked at Mom. She didn't look shocked, not confused, just quiet. Like this had been planned. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Came out before I could think. Not a full laugh, more like that stupid kind of giggle that slips when something snaps. Then I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the keys to the black SUV I bought them last year, and dropped them on the table. Then I guess you won't need this. That got their attention. Dad's smile froze. Mom's hand hovered midair over her wine glass. Becca just blinked. Then I opened my phone, logged into the joint trust account I'd set up for all of them, the one that paid for their mortgage, Becca's apartment, credit cards they somehow maxed out every month, and closed it. Zeroed it out. Done. Their faces drained. It was quiet for the first time all evening. Becca finally spoke. That's it. I nodded. Yeah, that was it. She laughed. Not a haha funny laugh. More like she thought I was playing some sick joke and was waiting for the punchline. About 30 minutes later, she wasn't laughing. I found her near the back of the restaurant behind one of those curtains they think hides drama. She was screaming into her phone, pacing, yanking at her hair. Then she turned on me, yelling that I couldn't do this, that I didn't understand what I was doing, that I was ruining everything. I didn't say anything. I just left her there. But that was only the start. That night was a line in the sand, and none of them realized just how far I'd already stepped over it. I didn't go home after the dinner. I checked into a hotel downtown and sat in the bar for a few hours with my phone on silent watching sports I didn't care about. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 17 missed calls. Becca called 8 times. Mom 4. The rest were from random numbers. Probably relatives who suddenly remembered I existed now that the money was gone. The next morning I drove to the house. Not theirs. Mine. The one I actually lived in and paid for. They hadn't stepped foot inside in over a year. Not since I stopped hosting Thanksgiving because they'd bring Tupperware to steal leftovers. I made coffee and turned on the news. Nothing. Quiet. Peaceful. Then the doorbell rang. It was Anthura. Full makeup, coat still buttoned. Holding a box of pastries like this was some normal visit. She said she just wanted to talk, that she didn't want to pick sides. But people were calling her and she needed to know what really happened. I let her in because I was curious how fast the narrative would shift. We sat at the kitchen table and she told me everything. Apparently, Dad's announcement wasn't just a symbolic thing. They'd been planning it for weeks. He and Mom had told a few people already that they were cutting the cord with me, that I was toxic, that I'd been manipulating them financially and emotionally. They framed the toast like some bold act of reclaiming their independence. Except they didn't expect me to call their bluff. They thought I'd laugh it off, maybe storm out, make a scene, but they never thought I'd actually take the car back or shut down the money. They thought I needed them to keep playing this little game. And Tara said Mom called her crying around midnight, not because I cut them off, but because she couldn't access one of her accounts to book a hotel for her post-birthday retreat. I'd forgotten I had that one under my name, too. Oops. That would have been enough for most people, but not them. 2 days later, I got served at work. A formal notice. Mom and Dad were suing me for financial abuse of elderly dependents. I almost laughed in the HR office when I read it. The lawsuit said I'd coerced them into financial arrangements and used familial obligation to exert undue control over their resources. They framed everything, every loan, every car payment, every tuition check for Becca, as if I'd been blackmailing them. The lawyer they found must have been either desperate or completely unaware of who was really bankrolling them. The best part, Becca joined in. She sent an email to my office's general inbox claiming I'd harassed her. Attached screenshots of text I'd sent, completely normal ones like, "You left your charger here," as evidence. I guess she thought the more dramatic the story, the more likely someone would take her side. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't post anything, but I started collecting screenshots, bank statements, voice recordings, messages where Mom begged me for rent money and promised to pay me back once her writing career took off. Dad's drunk voicemails saying he needed help covering a second mortgage he secretly took out to buy Becca a condo. But the next surprise didn't come from me. It came from Lily, my cousin, the quiet one who always sat at the edge of the room during family stuff, scrolling through her phone. She posted a TikTok, just her sitting on her bed talking about what financial abuse really looks like when your cousin gets scapegoated by his entire family after being their ATM for 10 years. It blew up, like really blew up. 500,000 views in a day. She didn't name names, but people started piecing it together. Commenters found Becca's wine review channel and dragged her so hard she deleted half her videos. Within a week, the lawsuit was withdrawn. But Mom and Dad weren't done. They started visiting relatives one by one, not to apologize, but to poison the well, saying I'd lost my mind, that I was cruel, vindictive, that I used money to punish love. But this time, people weren't buying it. And for the first time, the phone calls I got weren't demands. They were apologies. "I don't know what's gotten into your parents. I always thought something was off, but I didn't want to say anything. I'm ashamed I stayed quiet so long. That should have been enough for closure." But I wasn't done either. It was strange how quiet things got after the lawsuit was dropped. Like a storm that suddenly disappeared, but left the whole town standing around waiting for the next crack of thunder. Mom and Dad didn't call. Becca went offline. For a minute, I almost thought they'd finally gotten the message. But I knew them. Silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. I didn't wait. The funny thing about people who pretend to be independent is they always forget how many strings they've allowed someone else to hold. I started small, surgical. The SUV already towed and sold. But I didn't just take the money. I bought an old Honda with cash and had it delivered to their driveway with a bow and a card that said, "Let's see how free you really are." They didn't thank me, but they didn't send it back either. Then I canceled the family phone plan. Apparently, none of them knew how much of their lives were tied to that number. Becca lost access to all her social media accounts in one sweep. Mom couldn't get into her email. Dad missed 3 golf outings because nobody could get a hold of him. I waited 3 days, then sent a screenshot of a message Becca had posted 2 years ago, begging me to help her set up her business line because she didn't understand contracts. Next came the mortgage. I'd co-signed it years ago because Dad's credit was a joke and Mom cried about losing the house her kids grew up in. I had a clause in the paperwork, a quiet one my lawyer suggested when I set it up. It said that if either party severed familial ties publicly, the agreement could be dissolved and repayment accelerated. It took less than 5 minutes to activate. Now they owed the bank a full payoff in 30 days. That's when the real panic started. Mom called first. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that started off calm, then cracked halfway through. Something about betrayal. I didn't care. Then came Dad. He showed up at my office. My assistant called and said some guy was downstairs yelling that I was destroying my own blood. I told her to call building security. When they escorted him out, he looked straight at the camera in the lobby and gave it the finger. I clipped that footage and texted it to him. New family photo. But the most satisfying part, Becca. She texted me from a number I didn't recognize. I can't log into anything. This isn't funny. I ignored it. Then she tried again. Please, I have brand deals depending on this. I sent her a link to the refund policy on a digital marketing course. No context, just that. She didn't reply. They all went quiet again until Anthara invited me to dinner. Just her, Lily, and a couple cousins. I said yes because I figured I owed them more than silence. When I showed up, I didn't expect what came next. They gave me a scrapbook, old photos, stories, letters, stuff I hadn't seen in years. Some of it was dumb drawings I made in second grade, old birthday cards, but tucked in the middle were copies of emails, screenshots of texts, conversations my relatives had been having for years behind my back, warning each other about how entitled Mom had become, how Becca bragged about manipulating me. One email from Dad literally said, "Jack saw retirement plan," and they all signed a note at the end. Said they were sorry. Said they were ashamed that they didn't say something sooner. It didn't fix things, but it gave me peace. Still, I had one last move, not to destroy them, just to make them feel it. I took all the bank records, all the transfer histories, all the receipts, and built a full report. Then I submitted it anonymously to the IRS. Let them explain how 3 unemployed adults lived in a $500,000 home, traveled twice a year, and claimed zero income. They wanted independence. They got it. And for the first time in years, I finally felt free. It had only been a few weeks since I had sent that neat little package to the IRS, but the ripples were beginning to show. Mom stopped posting on Facebook. That may not sound like much, but this woman used to go live when she watered her plants. Now radio silence. No cryptic quotes. No passive-aggressive jabs at ungrateful kids. Just gone. Dad tried to sell the golf clubs I bought him. I know because he listed them under a burner account on Craigslist. And my cousin James, who works in tech, traced the IP just for fun. We laughed for about an hour. But the real shock came one afternoon when Lily texted, "Are you free tonight? There's a meeting. It's time." I had no idea what she was talking about. As it turned out, my little act of rebellion had sparked something. It wasn't just my parents who treated family like a spigot of free money. Apparently, there were other relatives, distant ones I barely spoke to, who were doing the same thing. When I showed up at Lily's house, there were 10 people sitting in her living room. I recognized most of them. Cousin Rachel from New Jersey, who used to send me polite holiday cards until she went through a divorce and was suddenly cut off from the same people who once made her pay for family reunions. Uncle Mike, who hadn't spoken to my dad in years because Dad had temporarily borrowed $5,000 and never paid it back. And then there was Aunt Linda. I hadn't seen her in a decade. She stood up when I walked in and hugged me like I just come back from the war. "We've had enough," she said. "They're not just selfish, they're predators, and we're done pretending." The stories began to pour out. Apparently, after I cut off the money, Mom and Dad panicked so fast they started turning on everyone. They told one relative that Aunt Linda had stolen jewelry from Mom's house years ago. A lie. Claimed that Uncle Mike was mentally unstable and even tried to convince Lily's boss, who happens to be a mutual contact of Mom's, that Lily had been spreading family gossip online. She almost lost her job. They were unraveling. Not just desperate, but vindictive. Classic scorched earth tactics. Aunt Linda pulled out a folder. No joke. A whole folder. Inside, screenshots, voicemails, copies of fake loan documents Dad once used in Grandpa's name back in the 90s. Stuff that could actually get them in some serious legal trouble. "Jack," she said, pushing the folder across the table. "We want you to help us burn them." It wasn't said in anger. It was surgical, focused. They weren't interested in petty drama. They wanted justice, exposure, and they needed someone who knew how to handle money, digital evidence, and wasn't afraid to go toe-to-toe with Mom and Dad. I didn't say yes right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to do it right. I spent the next few days combing through what they gave me, pulling records from public databases, dug through my own files. I hired a forensic accountant I used for one of my business audits and told her I needed a complete analysis of one family's financial fraud over the last 20 years. She didn't even blink. She said, "Who's the target?" I gave her the names. Her eyes widened. Oh, them. Apparently, my parents had crossed paths with someone in her company years ago. Made enough of a stink that the name alone triggered recognition. She said she'd take it pro bono just for fun. Things were falling into place. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was accountability. And I was going to deliver it with receipts, witnesses, and a chorus of relatives behind me. Ready to see Mom and Dad fall from the thrones they had built on lies and borrowed money. They wanted a war. Fine. I brought allies. It started with a letter, not an email, not a text, a real physical letter delivered to Mom and Dad's house from the IRS. Certified, required a signature. Uncle Mike had a friend who worked in the mailroom and gave us the heads up. It arrived in their mailbox on a Thursday morning. By Thursday night, Mom had called half the family sobbing about a misunderstanding. No one returned her calls. Over the weekend, they tried to do damage control. I saw the post. Mom logged on to an old Instagram account and posted a picture of a Bible verse and a sunset with the caption, "Those who judge will be judged in the end." Aunt Linda replied, "Start packing." But the real hits came from within. Cousin Rachel contacted the mortgage lender with copies of documents we found in that dusty old file. It turned out that Dad had listed 2 co-signers on an old refinancing form. Both were fake. One of them was Grandpa, who had been dead for 3 years at the time. The bank launched an investigation. Meanwhile, Lily took everything from her viral TikTok and expanded it into a YouTube documentary. 10 minutes of brutal honesty, complete with pixelated screenshots and carefully blurred voice messages. She didn't name names, but there was enough context for anyone in the family circle to see the truth. Within 48 hours, it had more than 1 million views. That was when things really started to fall apart. Dad's golf buddy, the one who clapped at the dinner toast. Turns out he was a co-owner of a side business Dad set up mostly as a tax dodge. After the video surfaced, he backed off, cited public image concerns, left Dad holding the bag with 2 years of back taxes and a sudden call from his accountant that, as Lily put it, ruined his 9th hole. Mom tried to throw Becca under the bus. She told relatives that the trust account was Becca's idea and that she never wanted Jack's money, but went along with it for Becca's sake. Becca fired back with a 3-minute voice memo that she broadcast to every group chat she was still in, calling Mom a liar and claiming that she begged Becca to keep me on the hook. Now they weren't just isolated, they were turning on each other. Becca lost 2 brand sponsorships after followers started linking her to Lily's documentary. Her inbox was filled with angry messages, screenshots of her laughing at my dinner meltdown. One of her sponsors even demanded a refund of their last payment, citing reputational damage. She emailed me the contract, said she needed help. I didn't respond. Then the estate hit. Uncle Mike, Aunt Linda, and I dug up Grandpa's original will, never formally executed, but handwritten and witnessed. It stipulated that his life savings would be distributed equally if no one committed financial fraud after his death. A clause that was more of a moral line than a legal one. But now, with all the evidence, we had something concrete. We contacted the probate attorney, presented the forged refinancing documents and the trust statements showing how Mom and Dad had diverted money under Grandpa's name. The attorney froze their share of the inheritance. Pending litigation. That's when the calls started again. Block numbers unknown. They tried Lily, then Rachel, even Aunt Linda. None of them picked up. But when Dad showed up at my building again, this time quietly with a manila envelope in his hand, I realized it was almost over. He left it at the reception desk. No note, just my name on the front. Inside, a handwritten apology. 5 pages. The last one wasn't even finished, just cut off in mid-sentence. But what got me was the check taped to it. $10,000. A refund of the last payment I made on her mortgage. No words, just the money. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe fear. Maybe one last attempt to get ahead of the story before it spread any further. But it didn't matter. Because by then, The family had already spoken, and what they wanted was clear. It all came to a head one Sunday. Sunny, quiet, one of those deceptive afternoons when the world feels too peaceful for what's about to happen. Aunt Linda was organizing a final family reunion. Not a party, not a reunion, just a gathering in her backyard with a grill and a long table. Everyone was invited, including Mom, Dad, and Becca. She said it was time to stop whispering and finish what we started. To my surprise, they showed up. Becca wore sunglasses the whole time, like she was hiding from the paparazzi. Mom came overdressed as usual, like this was her comeback moment. Dad barely made eye contact with anyone. The silence when they arrived was thick enough to cut. Linda opened it straight. No performance. She told everyone what we discovered. The fraud, the lies, the years of manipulation. She passed around copies of the refinancing documents, the trust records, even screenshots of texts where Mom and Dad were coordinating stories about who deserved more of Grandpa's inheritance. Then Rachel stood up quietly but clearly. She read aloud the names of every cousin, aunt, and uncle who had either loaned Mom and Dad money or been guilted into covering something. It took her 7 minutes to read them all. No one interrupted. Lily pulled out a flash drive and played a voicemail from Becca to a friend. In it, she said I was basically a doormat with a wallet and that she was going to cry when he finally cuts us off, but only until someone else pays the rent. Becca didn't even try to deny it. She just got up and walked to the back of the yard alone. And then came the last part, mine. I didn't make a speech. I just stood up, looked at the people who raised me, and handed them an envelope. Inside were copies of documents I'd already sent to a legal service, formal statements severing all financial, legal, and personal ties. I'd written them 6 months ago. I just hadn't sent them. Now they were real. Mom opened hers, glanced at it, and asked if I was serious. Dad didn't say a word, just stared at the table. Becca didn't come back. No one clapped. No one cheered. But the air shifted. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't alone. Then Aunt Linda announced the real surprise. She was taking over Grandpa's house. Turns out she'd been quietly working with the estate attorney for months. With the fraud exposed, the assets were being redistributed. Instead of letting it rot or selling it, she decided to turn it into something useful. A family trust, but this time with rules. Real ones. Only relatives who contributed financially, emotionally through caregiving could benefit. It wasn't about money. It was about values, boundaries, respect. The people who cared. Mom and Dad didn't qualify. Neither was Becca. When everyone got up to eat, to talk, to reconnect, Mom sat frozen, envelope in hand. Dad walked out, didn't say goodbye, just slipped through the gate like someone who knew it was over. Becca left a few minutes later, didn't say a word. I doubt she ever will. And me? I stayed till the end, helped clean up, told stories I hadn't told in years. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Not because I had won, but because the game was finally over. We didn't just get revenge. We got our family back. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.